28th, 2024 council meeting. I would like to recognize that we are gathering and meeting on the unceded traditional territory of the Comox First Nation, and we are grateful for their care and stewardship of this land since time immemorial. Could I have a motion to approve the agenda, please?
Move the agenda.
And a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Barecki. All in favor, and that's carried unanimously. There are minutes from the regular council meeting on October 1st.
Move the minutes.
Second.
Thank you, and all in favor on those. That's unanimous as well. And there's a recommendation to receive the committee minutes of Heritage Committee and Liquid Waste Management Plan Committee.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, and all in favor of those as well. That's unanimous as well. And we are on to reports.
Delegations.
Delegations. Where'd he go? Oh, there you are. Delegation Inspector Scott Mercer, please come on up. You're welcome to stand or sit. Just make sure your mic's on so the hordes of people listening from home can hear you.
Fair enough. Can everyone hear me, or?
Yeah.
Yep. Well, thank you, Worship and Council. First, I'd like to congratulate this council and the town on a successful summer of community events. I tried to involve my officers as much as possible, and I enjoyed my my patrols at Ribfest for the weekend.
We
Just
try
to-
and provide as many perks as possible.
Just to give you a broad overview of some of the upcoming events that we have and things that are going on in our detachment. Obviously, with Remembrance Day approaching, we've put the notice out to our detachment members to for as many to appear as possible in Red Surge. Obviously, it's an important day of remembrance, and we want to show our commitment to all the communities and to participate in whatever ceremonies are being hosted. I believe this year Sergeant Rob Brennan will be attending for Cumberland to their Legion. I will be attending the City of Courtenay, and Staff Sergeant Troy Beauregard will be attending Comox itself. With the Christmas season approaching, we also are looking to do a candy cane check stop. This is going to be a proactive initiative involving our municipal traffic unit and various stakeholders within the community. This isn't your typical enforcement campaign that we're looking to do, but more to raise awareness for some of our community programs that we utilize often, which is our Victim Services Unit, Crime Stoppers, and Citizens on Patrol. I'm hoping to employ that in the various communities, so Comox, Cumberland, as well as the City of Courtenay as well. And I'll keep you posted on when these pending dates are going to be. If you wanted to participate yourself or any members from council are more than welcome to. And also, we have a charity hockey tournament that Sergeant Rob Brennan and various persons are looking to organize with the Glacier Kings. This is to help support money and raise funds for the Wounded Warriors campaign. Rob is a fierce advocate for this. This is a campaign that raises awareness about post-traumatic stress disorders involved with military as well as first responders. As some may recall, last year he participated in an 8-day run across Vancouver Island to help raise funds and awareness. They also have a hockey charity game that they're planning for December 6th. Hockey tickets can be purchased either at the Canuck Center, the Source for Sports, as well as the detachment. There's a number of activities that are planned for that day specifically, but if anyone wants to see a bunch of cops get beaten up by the Glacier Kings, it's also a good, a good venue. Also included within the detachment, we have some shift and movement within our personnel. Surprisingly, when I came to this detachment, there's not a lot of promotions that happen and movement within the detachment, but in the past couple months, we have had a few people that have transferred out, senior members that are corporals, so we are looking to promote in-house and as well as nationally. I'm hoping to get a number of successful applicants to it, and within the next couple months, I should be able to review the packages and make a selection as far as the 2 positions that are available to us right now. Staff Sergeant Corey Kilborn, who was in the acting chair in my absence before I got here, has recently been promoted to inspector. He has gotten his white shirt as well and is transferring to Kelowna. He will be the investigative services officer, which primarily looks after their serious crimes and plain clothes section. So this is a really great career opportunity for him and a loss, in my opinion, for our detachment and our communities, because I rely heavily on Corey. He is a really good source of knowledge, and we seem to track well together as far as what we want to see in terms of policing initiatives within this community. So a loss for us, but a gain for Kelowna.
Please pass on our congratulations to him.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Also, we are now going to be getting a less lethal option in the detachment, a 40 mil firearm that basically discharges a hard foam round. These are used in incidences of where there is a threat that could threaten the lives of individuals, but we have a lethal overwatch in place. So instead of having to fall back and use a lethal means of force, we then can defer to this, and it actually has a very good stopping power. My experience is working with ACERT. All the municipalities have it. Some of our RCMP services have it as well. Traditionally, we used what was called a sock round, that used a beanbag. This is more compact. We're able to carry it within the cars. So we're foreseeing that we'll have at least 4 people trained within the detachment, so that every watch will have a less lethal option, so that we don't have to use our firearms in situations. On to the quarterly report, unless this council has any questions.
That's great.
With respect to the calls for service in the second quarter, we saw a 50% increase than the same time last year. Respectfully, there was about 88 files more this second quarter than last year's second quarter. This was attributed mainly to increases in check well-being complaints, as well as cause of disturbance and threats as well. The majority of these calls and the most common call locations originated around residences within Cumberland, so I'm not privy to say what those residences are, but if there's any questions as to where these are occurring, they're mainly occurring at residences and not necessarily in the downtown core area. The violent crime that was reported during the second quarter went from 15 reported instances from last year at the same time to 26. So we saw approximately 75% increase in violent crimes. Now, the violent crimes that we saw an increase on pertain to threats and harassment, as well as one reported incident of robbery, which, if you recall, I believe it was in July that there may have been reports or observations of our armored tactical vehicle that was utilized for an incident down here in Cumberland. So that would be in relation to the robbery offense that we saw. For property crime, we saw a slight increase to 6 reported calls for service than the reported quarter last year. The majority of these files revolved around theft of motor vehicle, as well as break-and enters to the community. We saw a rise in theft of motor vehicles from 1 to 6. A lot of these were not necessarily your traditional motor vehicles, but recreational vehicles such as ATVs and motorcycles, and it happened within a short period of time. Noticing the uptick in property crime, whether it was B&Es to businesses or thefts from the community, I did talk to my managers and look at more proactive measures to be done within the community. So you might have seen an increase in foot patrols that happened here, enhanced patrols that were put on throughout the community. It's not a silver bullet solution to all these, but we do recognize, and it's not lost on me, that there was a significant increase in a short period of time of property crime, and we wanted to respond in kind as well. So I'm hoping to carry that measure forward, because as we see with population growths, we tend to get more calls for service. So I'm not saying that there is a consistent trend that's going to be going upwards, but we're going to be monitoring it and then shifting our resources to maybe put more of a proactive presence within the village of Cumberland itself.
Sometimes when it pops up like that over the next year, it's generally one person or somebody's come back to the community. Is that something that you know about? Or
Usually that's the first thing that we look at to see, and we have a really good intelligence unit within our detachment that tends to notice newer people, transient activity that happens in this. The most recent break-ins that we see, the people were entering the businesses from the roof, but nothing appeared to be taken. So we haven't been able to determine a suspect for those reported incidences. The other ones, whether I believe that they happen at the bakery here, where a person broke in during the early morning hours and frightened the staff, we were obviously able to latch onto that person fairly quickly. We didn't see any sort of associated links from that person to other reported incidences that have happened. But again, just because one person is charged doesn't mean that we forget about them. We keep an eye and we look for patterns and stuff. And some of these individuals, when they are charged and released, we recommend conditions to keep tabs on them through so curfew or any sort of other enforceable conditions. So we tend to put that out to our general duty members and our street crimes to monitor their activity so that they don't escalate.
Just a question. Do you have any numbers surrounding what the referrals are to the Community Justice Center or that program?
No, and I'm glad that you brought that up. I mean, that is something that I've started to get heavily involved in myself over the past several months. We are looking to increase our proactive referrals for the Community Justice Center. I've since completed packages to put in all of our members' kits so that when they're out on the road and that there are instances that we feel that talking to the victim of a crime or the complainant that it might be within their best interests to maybe look at a restorative measure as opposed to the traditional charge and put towards the courts. That's something that we consider, but in my opinion, that shouldn't just be a catch-all for any sort of offense that we come in contact with. It should meet a certain category, whether the person, first of all, that is caught admits that their involvement was wrong, they're willing to proceed with the process. So I don't have any numbers yet, but over the next 3 months, we have targets that we're going to be putting in place for each line and watch that I'm going to be tracked through my quarterly reporting to show these proactive referrals, and I can even break it down by the communities in which they're utilized in.
Okay, thank you very much.
That would be awesome. Thank you. Other questions, council? Go ahead.
Just on the most common call locations, this is one private residence that's had 13 calls in this quarter, or or is this, there's 13 calls to private residences, or?
My indication from my analysts that these are residences, that there is several involved in these. Again, I could probably find out better information for you if you are, but my understanding, Councillor, was that this involved a number of residences within the community itself. So we have had instances in the past where, say, there has been a person suffering from mental health, in which we have often been called to a residence. So it's not unheard of that you would have a large number associated to a particular residence. In those particular cases, we try and find other means to try and resolve it, because obviously a police response isn't something favorable, right? So, but when we're talking about actual offenses themselves, such as harassment, those are typically driven by several crime indicators outside of just mental health. So we try and look at a number of things before we proceed down the route of charging. But specific to your question, my understanding is that it involves a number of residences. However, I will come back to you with better information if that's not the case.
Thank you.
And those, the increase, the dramatic increase in check well-being and disturbance?
Cause of disturbance?
Yeah. Are those, is that primarily like mental health issues?
So in the last quarter that I reported, the check well-beings revolved around specific houses to that, and that would be a case where we talked about mental health issues. The cause of disturbance is more in terms of those don't pertain to residences. Those are public domains, so streets outside of businesses and such. So that can vary from anything from intoxication to yelling, screaming. Sometimes people's interpretation of what disturbs them doesn't necessarily disturb other people, but it's still categorized as such.
Okay. Okay, that's great. Does anybody else have any other questions? All right. thank you so much for being here.
Oh,
And
thank
again,
you.
pass on our congratulations to Corey.
Oh, I'm going to tell him you hate him.
Well, he's definitely not going to have as
Dead
much
to
fun
me
in
anyway at
Kelowna.
this point, yeah.
So we know that much.
Thank you again.
Thank
Thank you.
Okay, and next up is site-specific floodplain exemption, cabin number 6. Hello, Seamus.
Good evening. All right. All right, so good evening, Mayor and Council. So the purpose of this report is to request council decision on an application to exempt cabin 6 at 2100 Horbury Road from the floodplain setback as required by the Village of Cumberland Floodplain Management Bylaw. For background, cabin 6, of course, is located at the Comox Lake Land Corp and was built at some point during the 1930s. Currently, the cabin is 118 meters squared in size, and the applicant is looking to construct a 14 meter squared addition at ground level and 38 meter squared loft for a total gross floor area of 170 meters squared. There is an existing basement, and note that the basement calculations are accounted for in those figures. So the cabins at the Comox Lake Land Corp are considered legally non-conforming as they are constructed prior to zoning bylaw regulations. Currently, zoning only permits one single-family dwelling on the property. Any alterations or repairs that go beyond basic maintenance require an order by the Board of Variance to conduct. And this applicant received an order from the Board of Variance in October 2023 to conduct a renovation and addition to that max gross floor area. The property is considered as being in the floodplain of Comox Lake, and the floodplain management bylaw requires a habitable area of a building to be above 137.5 meters. The applicant has retained an engineer, and that engineer has confirmed that the habitable elevation of the cabin is 137.9 meters, which is, of course, above the minimum elevation as posed by the bylaw. The basement area, of course, is there, but it is not considered habitable space as it is below the minimum floodplain elevation. The primary consideration here is the setback, as the cabin is within 15 meters of the natural boundary of the lake. So everything has to be outside of a 15-meter setback. The cabin is at 4.35 meters away from the natural boundary. In the review, the engineer reviewed the following lake levels, including the maximum height that BC Hydro, who operates the dam, they don't allow the lake to get to. So the maximum height of that is 134.42 meters. They also reviewed the highest recorded level of the lake, which is 136.21, and the overflow level of the dam. So when the dam just can't hold the water back anymore and the water is overpouring the top, that height is 135.33. So the lowest habitable level, again, is 1.69 meters above that recorded high level. And as such, the engineer took the opinion that the water levels are not anticipated to reach the building, even in the event of a high record level of water in the lake. And the engineer also noted in the report that high water is only likely for short periods of time because, again, the dam has that maximum height where water just ends up pouring over the top. Now, the requirement for the setback in the floodplain bylaw is to provide a channel for both for room in the event of a flood and to account for any erosion that may occur. However, the engineer in their review determined that the slope of the beach will mitigate any erosion action, and considering that of the fact that the water is unlikely to reach the building, the engineer supported this request for a site-specific floodplain exemption. Now, the Board of Variance report prepared last year did acknowledge the existence of a retaining wall and the need to replace it. In the context of the floodplain exemption, the engineer didn't find any issues with the wall, and it's notable that the wall is under 1.2 meters in height, which does not trigger a building permit from the Village of Cumberland, and there are no development permit areas required to install the replacement of the wall. The applicant has advised, though, that they've received provincial approvals owing to the proximity to the water to conduct that replacement. Should Council approve this site-specific floodplain exemption, the engineer's report prepared for this meeting will be registered onto the property's title via covenant with a save harmless clause to absolve the village from liability should a flooding event occur. And thank you for your time, and I welcome your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. You just answered mine. Other questions, Council?
That was one of my main ones too. Yeah, I've got one other question. The cabin is part of the greater Comox Lake Land Corporation, right?
That's correct, yes.
Yeah. And are we still having any bylaw issues with the corporation in general, stop work orders, unpaid fines, other bylaw issues? Where are we at with all of, because I know there was some at one point.
Yeah, and there are still some stop work orders and bylaw enforcement matters on the property. However, in this case, the applicant has taken the correct approaches to bring their cabin into compliance and complete a renovation as requested. So they've gone from Board of Variance authorization to site-specific floodplain exemption, and should council approve the site-specific floodplain exemption, we'll be looking at building permit issuance for this cabin and this cabin.
Okay, and then where are we at with the, I know there's also a subdivision application that's moving through, and we sent it back with comments and recommendations. Is that coming back at some point in the near future?
Yeah, and I don't think, do we have a timeline or?
Yeah, maybe I'll just speak briefly to that.
Sounds good.
Yes, so that's correct. There is it's a rezoning application,
Yes.
not a subdivision application. And it was referred back to staff several months ago, and we are working on that with the help of a planning consultant and legal counsel. It will come back to council.
Okay.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I'm a little new to this file. So the applicant is the entire property and all the cabins upon it? Sorry,
Sorry, can you?
the applicant is the owner of the entire property and all of the 25 cabins upon it? Or is the applicant the owner of this individual cabin?
Sorry, yes, that's correct. They are the owner of this cabin.
Okay, right,
Maybe
thank you.
if I could just clarify, the ownership on title is the corporation, Comox Lake Land Corporation.
right, yes.
So the Comox Lake Land Corporation has signed the application form and is authorized that the owner of this cabin move forward and work with staff on their individual cabin.
So I was just, because if it's a single property that has subject to bylaw infractions, stop work orders and other things under one owner, if it was elsewhere, right, then that owner would be required to sort all of that out before getting permission for something else on the property. Is that normal?
Yeah. Sometimes we can use the development application process to bring other things into compliance. Certainly, yes. In this case with Comox Lake Land Corporation, over many years, staff has been giving the advice that there is a way to renovate these existing but non-conforming cabins. They're non-conforming in terms of density, and the way is through the Board of Variance, and then any other, so not all would require a floodplain exemption. If they're further back from the lake, they wouldn't. And this is the first one that has come forward in this way. There's been some confusion about, whether or not this could actually properly occur. And this is the first time the Land Corporation has made such an application. So I think it is a recommendation of staff that we do move ahead with this to demonstrate how it can be properly done and not prevent this one from going ahead because of the other complex issues on the property.
Thank you. I have one detailed question then. Started off with the fact that the habitable height is above the necessary for the floodplain bylaw anyway. So that's a non-issue once it's proven, that fact in the engineer's report. So the only piece left is the setback.
And that's correct, yes.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but when I read through the engineer's report and the other report, the issue of the setback and the erosion created was a few lines, and the issue of the height of the building above the floodplain seemed to be the majority of that work, which is already an established fact. So how much sort of engineer's detail have we had on that erosion issue?
So I'm sorry, I don't think I'm understanding the question. So are you looking for, why was the report just focusing more on the height of the?
No, just really, do you believe that the engineers have considered the issue of erosion and the setback in detail?
Yeah, and I think that the discussion of the height does play into the discussion of the erosion, and I think what the engineers demonstrated in the report is that based on the levels of the lake and the height of the water that can be present, that the erosion, the two factors work together. So the height of the lake and the slope of the grade work together to eventually inevitably avoid erosion, essentially.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions before I ask mine? So theoretically, then, each cabin owner could individually apply to the Board of Variance and go this way, and the rezoning would never happen. And we would lose then the opportunity to do green shore and environmental sort of that aspect that we were hoping to accomplish with the rezoning.
I think there are a few more changes that the rezoning application goes through, and probably the most significant one would be to provide the potential for subdivision in the future.
Okay. And my other question is it's cement blocks that they're using to stop the beach from eroding, or to stop the water from coming under the house, I guess.
You mean the retaining wall?
Yeah.
Yeah, the retaining
It's
wall?
those cement blocks, yeah?
I believe so. The information just I've been given to
Okay.
date. But again, like there's no building permit required due to the height of it, so I wouldn't be aware of the fine details.
Okay, and we have no, so just going back again to the kind of Green Shores idea that we were hoping to accomplish with the rezoning, and if we've got a bunch of cement blocks that are on the edge of the lake, that's not then possible to put other natural retaining walls or habitat or bush or whatever else we might think that a Green Shores system might need, right? Sorry, that's a question.
Was it?
Yeah, and I think one of the, and I think that's going to be the purpose of a development permit area in the future,
Yeah.
is to be able to capture and provide us those better tools to request such things. So right now, that's kind of where this falls in, is there's no development permit area,
Okay.
and then if there was a development permit area, then yes, we can start looking at requesting some of those things as well.
Okay, so when the rezoning goes forward and we work out the DP, then the cabin owners who are non-conforming to this new development permit area would have to adjust what they've done. Or would they?
Maybe future
Yes,
work.
For a development permit,
Fine with this.
development permit would be required for future work and not retroactively if the development permit is new and wasn't in place when the work was
Okay, so
originally
it would just
done.
apply to people who hadn't already gone through this process. Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Alrighty, there's a
I'll
recommendation.
move the council approve the site-specific floodplain exemption for cabin 6 is located on the property described as fractional section 28, township 10, Comox District Plan 552H, together with that portion of the bed of Comox Lake included with the area shown outlined in red on plan deposited under DD 1983, except parts in Plan 21 RW 788 RW 26178 VIP 57417. Not to forget, EPP 82213, 21 Horbury Road.
Second.
May I comment before we?
Yes.
I do appreciate that the owners of this cabin have gone through the correct processes and gotten their permits from the Board of Variance and are trying to do everything legally. I still have trouble with this whole corporation. They're just one shareholder of a larger corporation that has stop work orders, unpaid fines, bylaw issues, and many other things I'd like to see come into compliance. So I just wanted to give a reason as to why I would be voting no on this.
Thank you. Any other comments before we vote? Okay. I'll just leave it
Actually,
at that.
I wouldn't mind, just on the yes side, while that is definitely an issue, I don't think it's fair to penalize just one individual who's trying to do it right, and I think it's encouraging for council who's to forge a path forward of cooperation rather than throw up roadblocks, because I think when we do these DP areas in the future, that's our chance to try and get what we'd like to see out of it, rather than right now, and the owner's at a stage where they'd like to renovate one particular cabin.
As well, this has been a long time coming, so
Yeah.
this is nice to see.
Yeah, I think we appreciate the, at least one cabin owner doing things properly. And hopefully this is encouragement for the corporation to get, that rezoning done. Any other comments?
Well, I guess new to this issue, it's the first time I've seen that, and it looks like, yeah, you're trying to move this along correctly. So I'll be supporting it this time. But I guess we'll see over the years further, and like to see progress as well.
Okay, and on that, I'll call the question. All those in favor? And opposed? Thank you very much. Now we're on to 3345 Second Street Affordable Housing Development. Forward movement on two things in a row. Go ahead,
Okay.
Courtney. Oh, sorry, Michelle.
Yeah, it's me. Okay, so back on September 9th, Council directed staff to negotiate terms of an agreement with Macola Housing Society, and when in fact it's actually Macola Development Services, actually, just to correct that. And you directed staff to negotiate an agreement for them to, like, if they were interested in acting as a funding applicant and proponent for the Second Street affordable housing development. And so we have been working with Kaylee Schramm, Executive Director of Macola Development Services, not Housing Society, and Jamie Beijin, who's the project manager for Macola Development. And they are on Zoom at the moment. They're going to come in to the meeting in case you have some questions as well, they can answer. So I've been working with them over the last little bit, or Macola, been working with Macola and now them, regarding to understand whether or not we can move forward with this affordable housing project. And basically the first step, it would be for us to enter into an MOU with Macola. And then that would allow us to start them getting enough information, us being able to share everything with them, and then they can also move forward because part of that is council committing to working with them on this. And I can't quite remember the actual resolution, but yeah, just to work with them towards the affordable housing. And so yeah, I think that's about it. Staff does recommend that we enter into the MOU, and staff does recommend that council makes the motion to commit to working with them. Do you have anything to add, Courtney, or no? And how about hi, Kayla. Kayla or Jamie, do you have anything to add to my report, or does?
Nope, I think we're just looking for that MOU so that we can get started preparing for the next funding application, which, based on recent events, even as of today, sounds like that might stay on track politically.
That's awesome to hear.
Inching forward, one
Yes.
vote at a time. Questions, council?
No, I'm just happy to see that we have a proponent and that we've got a chance to continue to try and move this forward. And hopefully we will be successful this time and construction can begin.
Yeah. And so once we have an MOU, you are able to use the drawings and everything, all the work that's been happened so far? Like we're not having to start from scratch, right? Just confirming that.
I don't think we would start from scratch per se, but there is an amendment to the zone going forward soon that might look at densifying the project a little bit. So we would just like an opportunity to kind of take a fresh look to make sure that we're putting forward something that we think stands a good chance of success. And I can let you know that we got 8 proposals in the last CHF and 12 in the last IHF successfully funded. So we do come with a fair bit of success sort of in our history.
Awesome. Hopefully that will work for us. Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Nope.
Okie dokie, there's a recommendation there.
I'd like to move the council approve a memorandum of understanding agreement dated October 28th, 2024 between Macola Housing Society or
Development Services Society.
Yeah, sorry.
Macola Development Services and the Village of Cumberland for the society to be the proponent for the affordable housing development at 3345 2nd Street, and that council authorize the mayor and chief administrative officer to execute the MOU.
You can do the second one.
And I'd like to move that council commits the village to working with Macola Housing Development on the affordable housing development at 3345 2nd Street, including establishing a long-term mortgageable interest for the society to leverage funding or lever funding and financing and support funding funding applications.
I'll second that.
Thank you. All in favor? Thanks so much, Kayla. We're looking forward to moving this forward.
Thank you, Kayla.
Here too.
Thanks.
Okay, Ride Lab event 2025.
Good evening.
Hello, Ryan. Hello, Kevin.
So back in March, we were speaking to the Committee of the Whole, and the Committee of the Whole asked us to draft a community events policy. That policy has been drafted and it's going to be presented back to the Committee of the Whole next week. As part of that draft policy, there is a clause that would allow staff to refer any application for a new major event to be referred to council. So in light of that, this summer we received an application for a new commercial event at Village Park that would fit that criteria. And then just given some of the general concerns that we've been hearing around events at that last March meeting, and the fact that this is going to be coming to the committee again next week, we wanted to provide council with an opportunity to give some direction on this one. So the event itself, it's called Ride Lab. It's a 3-day women's mountain biking festival, not a race, not a competition, an event, June 6th to 8th, 2025. The idea is it would feature guided rides, mobile vendors, it would have a special event liquor permit, morning yoga, and then a stage for music and movies. There's going to be some additional space, if it's approved, there's going to be additional space along the Colliery Trail for some van life camping. The applicant doesn't have a firm idea of how much camping to expect, but they estimated kind of between 10 and 20 camper vans is a best guess. And then all in all, they expect up to a maximum of 150 people at the event. The event itself would take place for 3 days. It would be 5 total days of park use, including a day of setup, a day of takedown. The applicant has hosted a similar event in Squamish for at least a couple of years, maybe just a couple of years. And they've provided several expected economic and social benefits that they expect the village to receive, which are included in that report. Part of the request is also a noise bylaw exemption to allow the music and movies to go until midnight each night. Currently, the bylaw would allow amplified sound to take place until 10 o'clock on Friday and Saturday and until 8 o'clock p.m. on Sunday. And the applicant has indicated that they're willing to be flexible on that, and willing to listen to council. The context of just looking at the broader schedule context, just given that this has been something that we've been talking about. It's a 3-day event. It's in an already busy summer season, as we all know. If we assume, I attached that chart to the report showing if we assume that all the same events that happened in 2024 were to happen again in 2025, which isn't necessarily the case, but it's a decent starting point. With this event, we would still have 5 event-free weekends between May and September. There's one event, if you're going through the chart and counting 6 weeks, there's one event, the Rock the Block Music Festival, I forgot to put on the list. So the number is right. There would be 5 free weekends. UROC, the United Riders of Cumberland, they had, just in speaking to them, they had addressed some concerns that this event would be just 1 week after its own women's enduro and 2 weeks after another nonprofit women's enduro called the Murder Horn Maiden, which I think is a great name. But they decided, their board of directors decided they were going to approve the event for 2025, and then they're going to reassess it next year, just to see how it all went. And so it's a similar recommendation that staff are making to council tonight, that the event is approved for 1 year and then brought back to council for any subsequent years that it's applied for. But obviously you have several options and alternatives at your disposal. So maybe I'll leave it there and put it forward to all of you.
Go ahead.
Is it possible to quantify the amount of stoke this will bring the community? Sorry. Just a question. Would you, or have you reached out to residents, or do you do any reach out to residents ahead of these sorts of things, or it's just you present it just around the noise times and things like that, just given the amount of traffic that goes on at the park?
Yeah, not specifically with this event. Yeah.
We did have a bit of pushback with, I think it was BC Bike Race with the morning, and the morning
Yeah.
bullhorn was a bit aggravating after a couple of
Yeah,
days.
there are a few noise complaints with that event. Yeah, a couple other events. Like we typically get a handful of noise complaints over the summer from different events.
Yeah, I think it's more like morning noise than it's not people partying all night. But my concern is around several concerns, actually major concerns. So one is that makes for 4 weeks in a row, then one weekend off, and then 7 weeks in a row where we have something in the park, and then after our 5 weeks together break, we have then 5 other events in a row. So it's nice that we have that little break in between in the hottest time, but I'm wondering about the damage to the park. Not all of these I'm seeing now are in the park, but most of them I think are. So one, the damage to the field structure, which is actually supposed to be for all kinds of sporting events. And then the other is the amount of, in talking to the other community groups, all these events require enormous amounts of volunteer time. And so if we're introducing for-profit events that are drawing volunteers away from then the neighboring nonprofit events that are supporting our community partners and our trail management and all of that good work that happens out there, are we kind of damaging the possibility of them raising funds to do that work, or they're putting their events in jeopardy because there's no volunteers left to host them? So those are my concerns. The other thing is, I think a lot of these are already approved in advance. Like I know BC Bike Race already has us on their agenda for on the register for next year. So council's ability to swap out, like I would say, okay, let's do this ride. Or this event. It sounds really interesting and it's new and different, but there's no mechanism for us to say somebody else has to go in order to balance the use of the park.
And the Cumberland Wild isn't happening anymore. That's kind of a bonus. That's like a huge one, huge footprint kind of.
Yeah. But this is another 5 days of people in the park, right?
Yeah.
It's just a lot. And and every event we host in the park means that other people can use the park. So the residents of Cumberland don't get to use the park that week. Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Can I just give a little bit of response to a couple of those things? So next week's Committee of the Whole report, in regards to the past approved events, what we're going to propose is put together all what we call major special events in one list and give the committee of the whole the opportunity to consider, would you like any of these previously approved events to come forward in the similar way that the policy would address new events? And that would give council the opportunity, if they felt there was any existing event that council wanted to reconsider, the opportunity for us to bring that forward should an event application be submitted in the future. Because we don't know necessarily from year to year. So that's how we would address, you mentioned BC Bike Race.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, they're advertising and they start selling their race, I think,
a year in advance.
the day after the last year's race ended. That's something that we attempt to address, but it's very hard for us to manage. So that's how we thought we could bring that one forward, and that
Yeah.
will be content in the policy report next week.
And it would be a year out. So we would then, if we just chose to swap one out, it would be for not the coming year, but the following year likely.
Well, it would be subject to an event application being submitted for an event based on this year's roster. It's hard because we don't have
Yeah.
full control over all these events. They may choose to come and go from year to year. They may choose to apply for different dates. And without that policy being part of this report, it's hard to have that context. But the applicant was hoping we were going to have this in front of council even a few weeks ago. So this is almost looked at as an example, but if council's not prepared to make a decision without that context, that is an option.
Right.
So,
Could I just, along those lines, could we just have the ability to bring it to council, but if something goes heinously wrong, or some event gets out of control, that immediately it be brought up if the applicant comes back and says, hey, we want to do this again next year? I think there was one. I won't mention, but there was one particular event here which there was a lot of burnouts in the middle of the street and things like that, and it would be something that we wouldn't have wanted to consider for the next year no matter what.
Right.
Does that confuse things, or?
Long time ago.
Yeah, it would be hard to distinguish what associated
Pre-approved.
actions were
Yeah.
directly associated with the event.
Yeah.
And then it would be, I think that would be, I don't know.
I think that's a good discussion for next week's committee of the
Okay,
whole.
that's fair enough.
Yeah. So, and sorry, I wanted to speak to the volunteers. That was my understanding, one of the key reasons why UROC's board chose to approve this on a one-year trial, to be able to measure the impact on
Okay.
volunteer recruitment for their own events, thinking that they were likely drawing from the same pool. So that was one of their major concerns as well, and part of the staff rationale for a consistent recommendation with their board.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just another concern here is it's a little light on details about the van life camping, and I know things like the Big Time Out or Atmosphere, Rock the Block. No, Rock the Block doesn't have it, but there was a camping permit system in place for that. This looks to be fairly laissez-faire. Is there any thoughts how they're going to manage it, or how village staff has managed this sort of thing in the past, or is it?
So it's the personnel involved. There's overlap between this and BC Bike Race, which also has that van life camping.
Yeah.
So I believe, I don't know the details of how they, sell off spots, but I believe you pay a certain amount and then they have volunteers managing where they park. And it's typically along the Colliery Trail between the parking lot gate and sort of heading towards the jump park there.
Okay.
Yeah, it's we have, to my knowledge, we haven't received any concerns with the van life aspect of that event in the past. Correct me if you know otherwise.
Yeah. Okay. No, I was just curious. It's a bit light on details. So.
Is the policy that's coming, like, do we have a policy around how we manage that sort of things? How we manage, like, dogs or other things that happen when people camp in places that are maybe not fully serviced?
I don't believe there's any specific language in the draft right now around camping.
No, we review the specific details based on the event application. So anytime there's camping required or requested, we would add additional criteria to the permit for sanitary facilities, for example. So BC Bike Race has shower trailers, which then connect to our services, and portable toilets. So that's how we manage that issue. Dogs are regulated by the park regulation bylaw.
And I think actually a good example is the Woodstove Festival coming up this year. We arranged to have some camping available. We asked that they provided a camping management plan, so they just spelled out exactly those things. They're going to have portable toilets. They're going to have volunteers managing, educating about quiet times, that kind of thing. And it's just, to Kevin's point, some additional requirements that we put on them.
Okay, awesome. So that's like on an event by event basis. You negotiate that stuff. The other thing that is just in terms of economic development for these events, and maybe this is a conversation for next week, but just to lead into that, is if everything is, if they're doing yoga and music and food and booze and all that's happening in the park, there's really very little economic spin-off for the village as a whole. And I get that with larger events where there's 700 or 800 racers, we maybe don't have the actual facilities or restaurants or services to manage that kind of direct influx on a weekend. But with 150 people, we kind of do. And it would be good to see some economic spin-off from these events versus them being completely self-contained as a unit in the park and not really interacting with the rest of the community.
Yeah, and all I can really say to that is what the applicant has said. They have said that they're working with and are continuing to actively connect with as many local vendors and businesses, like food trucks, guiding companies, transportation services, hotels. So yeah, that's
Airbnbs.
Air-
Whatever. Okay. Okay, that's great. Any other questions? Go ahead. Nope.
Mine, you should go first.
Can I just ask about the noise exemption? How many, it's 3 nights all the way to midnight. Are there many other events that do that? And does that produce any complaint or comment from the neighbors?
Yeah, we've certainly had events that have gotten an exemption on like the Friday and Saturday night. I can't think of any that have gone that late on a Sunday. Yeah, I mean, like I said, there are typically a handful of complaints over the year, over the summer. Yeah, whether it's early morning or, yeah, it's really, it's hard to say. It's more about how the organizer manages the sound, I think. This applicant in particular, proactively said, we'll point speakers away from residences, and they mentioned even reducing the volume of the music or music sound, whatever it is, movies, at 11 p.m., between 11 p.m. and midnight. They also indicated that, if council is not prepared to grant that kind of an exemption for all 3 days, even if it's just Friday, Saturday, even if it's just Saturday, they said they're willing to, they want to make the event happen. So they're willing to work with that.
So we could add that into the recommendation to just do 1 night of exemption or something.
Yeah, I hate to be a killjoy, but Sunday, 3 nights running, and then
Yeah, I agree.
one of them is Sunday before you go to work on Monday is a bit,
Go ahead, Councillor.
I'm just wondering, with the setup on Thursday, Friday, and the event on Friday, and then the tear down on Monday, are we bumping any other users of the parks at that time? Are there like baseball clubs, rugby clubs, anybody else that generally booking the field for those times that's getting bumped?
I don't think there are any regular bookings that I can think of. Minor baseball typically wraps up in, I believe it's April and May. Rugby, lacrosse tend to go over the winter. There's not currently any regular soccer bookings. We would typically, June? Yeah, so we wouldn't even be running a summer camp by then. Yeah, nothing that's jumping to mind in terms of a regular booking.
Okay. And yeah, I like the idea of if we're going to give the permits on Friday, Saturday night, and then a shortened permit on Sunday, or even no permit on Sunday, I'm happy. However, but yeah, till midnight on Sunday seems excessive.
Yeah, agreed.
I just got some housekeeping here. We've been going for 4 years. The Cumberland Cup is a society, not a ball hockey tournament. So everything else is properly branded.
called
I'd like
the
to see
Cumberland Cup.
Cumberland Cup instead of ball hockey tournament.
You know what? I
Not
think
for profit. It's called Cumberland Cup.
I'll consider myself reprimanded.
I think I made that edit in next week's report, so I was just a week late.
And also, we'll be in week 3 as well. So but that's not conflicting, so. The 14th, 13th, 14th.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
For
Is that the?
Sorry, is that the same week that Ride Lab is being proposed for
they're,
then?
they're saying the 9th, I think. It's the next weekend after.
So it'd be the weekend after.
13th,
June 6th to 8th is what
Yeah,
this
we're-
event is
yeah,
being proposed
Yeah,
for.
we're 13, 14.
Because they're using the.
Yeah, the
court.
basketball court, which
Yeah.
we use for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
And that other event that's in the third week of June in that chart, the BMX provincial race, it's my understanding that that's not necessarily an every year occurrence. I haven't seen an application for that this year. It doesn't necessarily mean it's not coming in, but I don't know if I don't expect that it's an annual thing.
And that's likely camping and stuff as well.
That's what they did this past summer, yes.
Is there any, is there any benefit to the village of all these camping? Is that an additional park fee
Yeah, we
if
charge
as a camping add-on, or I don't remember seeing it in our new fees bylaw at all.
Yeah, not in the context of this event. What we do is, so the fees bylaw has a fee for the entirety of Village Park or individual sections of Village Park. So, for example, Woodstow Festival, they've got 2 sections of Village Park that they use for camping. So it's an additional fee in that respect because they weren't typically booking any of it, and now we've got 2 sections for camping. In the case of this event where they'd be booking the entire, like once you get more than 2 sections, the price is cheaper to just book the entire park. So yeah, there wouldn't be any additional financial benefit.
So the amount of money that we get for this event is the $3,400 for 5 days in the park.
Yeah, that's
Right.
correct. 3817.
And they're charging significantly more than that per person. Okay, there's a recommendation there, council?
I'd just like to add that I would support this for 1 year as well, only
Trial.
trial, yeah.
I think we're pushing our
That's it
luck.
for me.
Is anyone willing to make the recommendation?
Where are we landing on Sunday? Do we want to let Sunday
was
like
gonna-
regular time, or let it go till 10 o'clock, or where are we landing on the Sunday?
I feel like a lot of events like want the exemption, but don't really go to
Yeah.
that late, but
10 o'clock.
saying 10 would be
reasonable.
reasonable. I think.
Gotta be comfortable with that.
Alright.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd
Friday,
like,
Saturday, but not Sunday?
yeah. I'd like to move the council recommend that staff approve an event permit application and noise control bylaw exemption request for Ride Lab 2023 for Friday and Saturday night only, and that any subsequent applications for the same event in the future year be brought to council for consideration. So that
Well,
gives
it's
it
Sunday.
the
And
1
then,
year.
and Sunday till,
Sunday till 10.
Oh, Sunday till 10.
Yeah,
Okay.
Sunday till 10.
So it's Friday, Saturday till midnight,
Yeah.
and Sunday till 10. So it is an exemption each night, but to
Yeah, 2 hour,
reduced
a
amounts.
2 hour
Yeah.
add-on each night,
Yeah,
basically.
Do you need that in the motion, Rachel, or is that enough for?
I think I put that together. So you're approving the permit application for the full period?
1 year?
Always
And there's-
Friday, Saturday till midnight, Sunday till 10.
Till 10
Is there,
PM.
is there no exemption? Sunday till 10?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
And I think it covers that subsequent application for the same event be brought towards council. So it's basically a 1 year run. That's captured
Yeah.
within the motion.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? It's just me.
Thank you.
Okay, council member, thank you. Council member appointments. Let me find it. Do you want to introduce
Sure, I
that,
can
Rachel, while I find
maybe talk
my,
about
there it
this.
is.
So the report outlines appointments for 2025, including acting mayor, appointments for director to the CBRD board, and the CBRD commissions along with that. Some liaisons to community associations, community groups, and a couple of village committees, the Homelessness and Affordable Housing Committee and the Wastewater Advisory Committee. it's all laid out there in the report. There's some vacancies for spots where there's no recommendation for council to have a discussion, including the CVRD board. And a note that appointments of liaisons to the community groups are completely optional for council. It's not mandatory that you make those appointments. Whether council appoints liaisons to those groups or not, council members are always welcome at those meetings. So happy to answer any questions or help you as you go through these appointments.
Okay, so maybe we'll start with CVRD. So it is my hope that Councillor Tyrion and I can stay in those positions till the end of term, so that we're not forcing staff to orient new directors at this point, having already done that once this term outside of the election. So any concerns or questions on that?
I'm happy to stay on, but I'm not sure I want to be called the primate representative.
Yes, I know.
Oh,
I was hoping you wouldn't pick
Troy. You're so much more than a primate. Oops. I totally didn't even see that.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to continue with those two boards. I feel like I'm up to speed
Just
on
getting
them.
this one
Just getting
in
up to
now.
speed on them now, and yeah,
Yeah.
it's good.
Do we make motions as we go along, or do we make a huge one?
We might be able to do it. Yeah, we could do them that might be easier, hey? To do them separately?
How about the acting mayor first?
Oh, let's do the acting mayor first, yes.
And,
So we just basically subbed Councillor Ward into where Councillor Kettler was. So if anybody wants to swap, now's your chance to negotiate. I will be away at the end of November,
For how long?
maybe a week.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to have a vacation in December and then another small one in March, I think. So
So
this
you're
one works.
safe.
This one works for me.
I'll be away for a few days around New Year's. That's it.
I'm gone for 10 days in February, but February's pretty.
You're away in February,
Uh,
and you're in February.
Well, I was going to say that my
wanna
June and
swap?
July, I tend to have more time out and away. So I wonder, Councillor
I've
Sullivan,
done the summer. I'm not going to do this.
you don't want to do,
done
you don't
the
want to do
summer for
May
many
to
years.
July.
No,
No, that's
no,
fine.
no.
I can
And
understand.
it usually, I mean,
I'm a new
it's
guy. I'll
very
take
rare
it.
that we need to fill in, but
Yeah.
Does
I don't
anybody
mind.
else want to swap out the summer?
I mean, for Councillor Ward, I'll swap out this year.
Not a problem. I'm happy to
No,
stay
no,
with it
it's-
if you want.
You have a boat. I don't.
Okay, so
be
let's
prime.
I
put,
just went back on what I just said, so let's switch it up.
yeah.
Oh, thank you.
So
I come to the
Councillor
table with-
Sullivan, May to July, and
Let's say no,
Councillor
I meant that.
Ward, February to April.
I hope that eases your February away time as well.
Yeah.
Okay, and then,
So you want a motion for that?
sure.
Yeah, I'll move that council appoint acting mayors for the time periods below with the switch for Councillor Sullivan and Councillor Ward.
Okay.
And
Oh, second, sorry. There's a procedure for voting.
Yeah.
All in favor? And
I
any
forgot.
opposed? No? Okay. So then, the next one is CVRD.
Well, I'll make I'm ready to move that. What do I do? The district board director is Mayor Brown, and the alternate director is Councillor Tyrion. Is that the correct?
Primate representative, yes.
Whoop, whoop.
Second. Who seconded that?
I'll second
Oh.
that.
Okay, Councillor Tyrion, and all in favor?
Can I confirm that's for the remainder of the term?
Oh, yes, for the remainder of the term?
Yeah.
Yes?
Thank you.
Yes. Okay, and then Comox Valley Coalition to End Homelessness. So I think it's wise to have similar people on this potentially attending these meetings, that's on the Homelessness and Affordable Housing Committee. So I'm suggesting, I think Councillor Tyrion is the HA committee, right? Rep or alternate? Sorry, is it in here? It's in my worksheet, and I don't have my worksheet in
Say
front
the
of me.
liaison for the homelessness, just Councillor Ward as alternate.
Yeah,
It is Councillor Terrian.
okay,
It does say that further down.
okay,
In the table on page 59.
yeah. I just can't, I've got my notes in the wrong spot. Okay, so,
Way better table.
right? Is it easier to just look at that?
That was in the report. It wasn't. Yeah.
There it is, okay. And there's no alternate right now for HA, so we could appoint an alternate.
Do that if you'd like.
What day is that?
That is, I think they're doing, so Coalition to End Homelessness, I think they're doing on Wednesdays at noon.
Which is a bad time for me.
Yeah.
To do that.
I can do that
Or,
too.
yeah.
Yeah, I can't do
And then Wednesdays at noon is also the early years
Oh,
collaborative.
and we were gonna get you to do that.
Okay.
Okay, so,
Okay, I'll do the collaborative then.
okay.
Because you have an early years.
Yeah,
You got one of
it's
them.
in the earlier zone. Okay, so then Counselor Ward as alternate for Homelessness and Affordability Committee and
And coalition.
Coalition. And again, anyone is welcome to attend those meetings. They're on
And
Zoom.
so would that be better to just appoint him for both of those and me as alternate, since I have trouble
Sure.
making those meetings?
Sure.
I'm happy to. I don't know if we've actually had a homeless and affordable housing
I don't
committee
think we
meeting
have.
in a very long time. I think I've been to one since I started.
Yeah.
So it's not,
It's
Yeah.
not high demand.
it's not a high demand.
I'm happy with either being
Yeah,
the member or being the alternate, or liaison.
yeah, no, I'm happy to be the liaison or the alternate for those. And
Okay, so do you want to make that motion, Counselor Tyrion?
Sure.
to-
I'll move that Councillor Ward is the primary person on the Homelessness and Affordable Housing Committee and the Coalition to End Homelessness. And I will be the alternate on both of those as well.
Excellent. Thank you. And do we have a seconder? There's a seconder, Counselor Ward, and all in favor? That's unanimous. Okay. Early years, Counselor Barecki is there with Counselor Tyrion as alternate. And Food Policy Committee, anybody?
All yours.
I will continue to attempt to attend those. Welcoming Communities Coalition, Rachel, thank you for putting that information. That was way more than the notes I had scraped together. If anyone's interested, I find it really interesting. They've done like anti-racism training. They do other kinds of events, and they're just it's an interesting group. Anyone's interested in that?
Is that?
That's kind of random. It's maybe 2 or 3 events a year. I think the last one I went to was on a Saturday. Some of them are in the day, some of them are in the afternoon.
And I have some interest in that. I mean, I just, having had a privileged immigrant experience ourselves,
Yeah.
And there is overlap in my mind between affordable housing needs and those coming to our communities. So I have some, if there's someone keen to do it, that's fine. But
Okay.
I wouldn't be. Don't know how many of their things we'd make. But
I will. So do you let them know afterwards, or should I? Okay. Okay. So do you want to make? Who wants to make that motion?
I'll make the motion that Councillor Ward be on the Welcoming Communities Coalition Immigrant Welcome Center.
Thank you. Seconder. Thank you. All in favor? None opposed? That's carried. And then there's Bisocial BC, so it's BCSPI, but it's now run by Bisocial. And these are learning events, and then there's well, Rachel said it, there's a steering committee, which I am not going to be involved in anymore, because I have too many things. So if anyone's interested in that, otherwise I can just keep forwarding, you know, all the invites.
Don't make me do any more procurement.
This is not just any procurement,
Oh,
it's
I know.
social procurement.
What time do
It's
they
cool.
generally meet?
That, if you were on the steering committee, you could have a say in that. Yeah. I don't know, it's not regular in any way right now, because the transition to Bisocial just happened.
Okay. Can we just leave that one sort of open for now, and I will try and attend those meetings, time permitting. I see the value in it, but I'm
Yeah.
just not sure that I can commit
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
more.
Okay. Okay,
time
I'll just
at
keep
this point.
forwarding those invites, and you guys can decide.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Homelessness and affordable housing, we already did that. So wastewater, which looks like it's going to be on Thursdays. So,
I'll move that, Councillor Tyrion.
Yeah, I can do this one.
you can do the Thursday,
We
awesome.
might, maybe we can move the timing just a little bit on them, or can we do them earlier in the day, Rob?
I think it'll depend on the availability of the committee members.
Yeah.
Per day, but we could check with them on whether mornings would work versus afternoon.
Okay. Yeah, my client on Thursday wants to move their timing anyway, so I think it'll be okay. Yeah.
Okay, so we need a motion for that, I think.
Second.
Yeah, I'll move it, Councillor
Councillor
Tyrion.
Ward.
Oh, you did that,
Second.
thank
Yeah,
you.
Second.
That's a mover, that's a seconder.
I'm a shaker.
We're all in favor?
There we go.
Thank you, that's unanimous. And then we need a motion to give Councillor Ward a signing authority.
I'll
so
move
he
that
can be
council, I'll move that council delegate financial signing authority for the Village of Cumberland to Councillor Ward when designated as acting mayor.
Second.
And all in favor on that, and that's unanimous as well. Okay,
Yay.
that's all those. All the pages, okay. Communication strategy, social media. Funny how that climbs to the top.
You're taking it on your own there, aren't you?
Yeah, we don't need this.
Vicky can battle it out on the rants and
If you
raves.
hire me an assistant, we
Counselor-
definitely can.
Counselor.
And I'll just ask Andrew to do it.
Yeah.
Mayor Brown, are you giving up your part-time?
My part-time social media challenge. No, I'll post the agendas for now. For now.
So, council saw the communication strategy back in March and had a great discussion about social media and the value of it, and a bit about staff capacity, and that we now have a part-time communications coordinator working with us, which is fabulous. And so we're coming back to this now, and we think we can implement a village social media presence. But one thing we would have to do, limited, mind you, limited social media presence, and limited would be basically using the same information that's already going out on the village website, not enabling commenting on the social media pieces, and that would definitely make a difference, because I think a lot of time goes to monitoring, and we have different tools for engagement on Engage Comox Valley, and we would direct residents to send emails, continue to send emails for comments and questions. And we would expect to focus on Facebook and Instagram initially. So if council did want us to go ahead with the social media in 2025, staff would have to create some policy and procedures and set up some templates and build our photo library. So there's a bit of work to be done ahead of time. The second recommendation in this report is when we were looking at gaps in public information, and counts and the strategies target to support elected officials by distributing relevant and current information to residents. We realize that there's definitely a gap, and we could do better in promoting council projects, and especially those that aren't on Engage Comox Valley. There's a few that really don't have a lot on the website about them, so we'd like to work on building
The dam
that.
and stuff like that?
Pardon me?
Like the dam and stuff?
Yep,
Yeah.
that's one. All, the ones that basically don't have an engagement component. So the dam, what was it, the Second Street Housing Project, I don't think really has much on the website.
No,
The
we don't need to
transport.
push that one so much. do we?
But even things like
We
which
can let
roads
that
are
one
being
ride.
paved this year.
Capital projects,
capital
yep,
project plan.
capital
Yeah.
projects. Is current development as well. There is a page, but I think it needs a bit more attention. The transportation master plan implementation we could add on there, but that's good. It's a bit of work, so we're going to have to build that up, and we'd like to have somehow have it focused on the main web page so people can see it and can look a bit deeper if they want to. I think there's people in this community that would like a deeper dive into some things and like more information. And then those pages, those feature pages could be promoted through the social media piece. So, bringing in these two actions into the strategy means we have to look at moving some things out. I think it's important to us to focus on fewer tools with the limited staff time than spread ourselves too thin over too many things. So we'd be looking at moving back utility bill inserts is a suggestion. We will continue to send out the solid waste calendar each year. There's a utility bill insert in January that actually talks about the increase in rates. And there's the property tax insert in May that we will continue to do, but we won't be expanding that. Newsletters and flyers do take a lot of staff time and
Sounds
cost.
like the folder's gonna get a lot of work.
They'll be pulling utility bills and tax bills.
There was one thing, is it possible to purchase just like a lump page in Currently Cumberland as it goes out and maybe just highlight something in there? Because
Yes,
it does have a pretty good reach.
We've been doing that
I've
since
seen
the
some of the
past
work,
year,
yeah,
yeah.
Yeah.
which I like that.
There's been a council page in there every issue for a while now.
Yeah, or even like a bigger one at the end of the year.
Find the
I mean,
council corner idea.
you don't want to hijack the whole thing, but if there's something,
that,
you know, like the
I guess that's you.
liquid waste management plan or the launch of that, just to use that particular avenue for maybe something a little bit more in depth.
We could look at that. We'd have to increase the budget.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
Councillor Sullivan, did you have something to add?
We could look at that for
Slipped in the
2026.
in camera there, sorry.
Could
No,
ask, I mean, without totally understand not having commenting, and I don't think I'd recommend opening it up, but the level to which anything you post on social media reaches people is determined by the amount of engagement. Engagement means how many comments you get, are weighted way more heavily than likes. So we want to monitor how, whether we're just posting to the void. Hopefully there'll be active citizens up there who will pick things up, put them out on either the bulletin board or their own personal feeds, and then things will flow from there. And they'll manage the commenting themselves within that. So that's the hope, but be active, be really carefully looking, I think, over the first 3 months at,
Well, we could just advertise people to be friends with our page too.
yeah. Well, no, but then, sorry, this is getting detailed.
Yeah,
but
maybe don't need to go into
But we don't need to go into it, but keep an eye on the engagement levels.
And we are, as council members, more than able to promote any communication that's coming out of the village via our own social media
So it's on us too.
pages. It could be, if you're willing to go on social media. Did you have more, Rachel?
A couple other things that we like to defer is the e-newsletters, community events, participation at community events. Those are very time consuming unless council members would like to participate. You're welcome to. Let me know if you'd like to attend events and we could set you up with some information.
In lieu of staff? Is that, sorry?
Pardon me?
In lieu of staff?
I don't think,
I think
I just didn't hear that.
Yeah.
I think the plan originally was for like us to have a table at market days and then council would take turns being there or whatever. Not so much staff, but staff have to set it all up.
Right, okay.
And prepare.
Yeah. Information or materials.
Is pretty intensive work to prepare for those events. And another deferral would be, or something to consider is, in the strategy was department updates of village hall meetings. And village hall meetings have traditionally just been residents bringing up topics. We could look at that as a long-term option to prepare information for council to share with the public at village halls, but it would change the dynamic of the village hall a bit.
Maybe people would show up.
I mean, I think there's so, like, when our village, like, one of the village halls is the budget presentation. If there was something else happening when we happen to have a village hall scheduled, we could be
Fire
prepared.
spinners or something? Like,
No, some major movement on the wastewater, or some major movement on the dam, or some major, I don't know, project or something. I think we could use the village hall
like once we have them, throw more stuff at 'em.
just to add, like, if there's a timely topic that's coming
Framework
up in the
for the
community, I
village
think
hall,
it's
rather.
appropriate for us to mention that. If it doesn't, I mean, but I also think it's really helpful just to have the community decide what's important. Can show up or not.
So I also think the village halls have been superfluous, personally. Speaking of staff time.
Right.
Maybe that's a discussion when we bring the calendar.
bud- the,
up next week
calendar.
to the
I
committee
wasn't
of
going
the
to
whole.
get into it, but yeah.
And then just quickly about the village hall, like for the last probably 2, 3, maybe even 4 years, it's only been the CAO and the corporate officer, and once in a while the CFO will come to
Budget,
these
yeah, if
village
it's
hall
the budget
meetings,
one or
but
whatever.
not typically all of department staff. So that's probably like when we brought this strategy to you to begin with, I didn't kind of understand the implications of that. I wasn't so. It's probably like to have department updates at the village hall is probably not going to work the way
It's a
we've
lot of
structured
extra
it.
work, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there'd be more staff than public, for sure.
Yeah, and that's something we
super-
try
It's
to
not a good look.
not to do.
Yeah.
And with it being not a structured agenda, it is just best to have the staff that you have there already, and it be council's meeting.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think the purpose of them is to hear from people, not necessarily for us to be disseminating or,
That's right, yeah.
Yeah.
Need to find a format where that can happen.
Maybe if we called them fireside chats.
Right.
then we need a fire, you know?
Sweet.
We could.
Ideas.
Or fire spinners.
Okay,
I'll move
there.
the council accept the
Yes.
revised communication strategy October 2024 with social media presence and website feature pages for council strategic initiatives and village projects as medium-term priorities.
Second.
And all in favor? None opposed, and that's carried. Okay. Liquid Waste Master Plan Presentation Update. Come on up, Rob.
So,
And Paul.
I've just quickly put together a cover report, but there's an attachment that explains some of the details and complexities related to the village's liquid waste management planning process. Thank you, Rachel. It provides an update on work required by the Ministry of Environment and also seeks council approval to increase the scope and costs of the LWMP project. And we're looking to sole source some of the existing to sole source the existing wastewater project engineer to assist with some of the technical requirements. The recommendation is to use Phase 2 project funding to complete the additional work which is related to the wetland and receiving environment. And then we'll also talk a bit about some of the current challenges with the consent order dates. So here to provide all the details on the LWMP is Paul Nash, of course, our LWMP coordinator. Over to you, Paul.
Well, thanks, Rob. I think you've just about summarised my report there. I'm not sure how much there is left to say. But anyway, since I've done a little report, we'll just quickly go through it. Third and final stage of the LWMP, we did restart in May, and we had our budget approved. The very next week, we had starting the next week, series of meetings with the Ministry of Environment to define in detail what was going to happen in stage 3, and it turned out to be a bit different from what we expected. So, a long story short, we are having to do more than what we'd originally expected for the LWMP itself, and also the operational certificate, which is the regulatory authorization document. It's comes out of the LWMP, and that replaces our old permit. We have to submit that at the same time. Normally that would come a little bit later. So we end up with a compressed time frame for completing this on top of all the project challenges we've had. So it's been got a lot of work that we are doing, and the 2 diagrams I'd put in there about the process. So the first page there on page 88, how it normally plays out, where you go through these stages, submit a stage 3 LWMP report that has the conceptual plan for what it is we're going to do. Ministry reviews it and says this is good, hopefully. Then you go and do more detailed design on it, and you would then submit for the operational certificate once you know exactly what it is you're doing. And the example I'd link later on there about Revelstoke is an example of that. What's happening for us, the second diagram, of course, we've got design and construction underway as we speak, and we've got this blend of phase 1 works to get us into compliance with the old permit, and phase 2 works which are anticipating the future regulatory requirements, and they're sort of happening at the same time. So we've got an unusual process, and that in itself causes complications. And we have our consent order, which is added to the complications, right? Have everything done by the end of this year. And regrettably, we won't. So the consent order said Cumberland commits to having the authorised works, that meant nutrient removal and disinfection facilities, in effect our the lagoon upgrades and the post-lagoon treatment, that we would have that in operation by the end of this year, and that we would have our LWMP submitted by the end of this year. And when that timeline was put together back in 2020, that did seem like a hell of a lot of time to get it done. And for a variety of reasons, here we are, and we won't have the works finished for another year, and our LWMP, we won't have it finished by the end of this year, but we think we can get it done end of the first quarter. And we've informed the ministry that we can't meet that commitment. So the reasons for the delay there, section 2.1, right, we've had delays in our design. Won't need to go into that in any more detail here. We had more requirements from the Ministry of Environment about the EIS. The project team and our consultants thought we'd had sufficient field data that we wouldn't have to go back out into the field. The ministry's asked for a lot, so we have to go back out into the field. Our change in disinfection method changes things. And then I was delaying re-engaging with the ministry, so part of this is my fault here, because we wanted to get our project originally up and running first, see what the improvement was, and then the EIS is, do we need to do anything else? It became obvious a year ago we weren't going to get this done first. So now when we go back to the ministry, and they've given us this compressed time frame and these extra requirements. So had we restarted it earlier, we would have had these EIS requirements earlier. We would have been having this budget discussion earlier. However, what wouldn't be any earlier is top of page 91 here. The level of detail required for the operational certificate application is such that it can't be completed until after the project detail design is completed. We have all these plans that they are requiring us to submit at the same time as the LWMP, commissioning plan, operating plan, contingency plan, etc. So we can't do a commissioning plan until all the design is completed so that we know what it is we're commissioning. And so on it goes. This is why the operational certificate would often come later on after an LWMP report. Here they're saying we want both at the same time. They've been very clear on that. So we could theoretically have an LWMP report finished, ready to go, while we wait for all of the operational certificate technical details to be completed. So that's put us in a time crunch, I guess, is the best way to describe it. But we can't complete these till we finish the design, which has been changing under our feet this summer. In a good way, but it's a change and a delay. And that is the way it's played out. So the project schedule I've provided there, we've got some stuff done. The EIS fieldwork has been completed. The consultants started on the analysis, but we need a lot more budget for that. Public engagement has restarted, but we'll have to do another round because things have changed. First Nations consultation, we had to contact 10 regional First Nations. Got that number right? In addition to Comox, I think it was 10. And we either hadn't had a response or they've said we'll just defer to whatever Comox goes with. And with Comox First Nation themselves, we have them coming to site on Friday, November the 8th, which is great, to see what's going on, see, smell and taste it. So that is part of it, so we're happy to have that moving forward. And then the other elements there, we can start then on drafting the Stage 3 report. The Ministry wants to review it early as soon as we've got it drafted, but we can't complete that till our EIS is done. And then down on the very bottom, the OC requirements carry on and we'll get those done. So a lot of things happening at once. Good progress on some, and the operational certificate part, I included that table there just so you can see the level of detail we have to do. Normally that would come a little bit later, but here we've got to get it all done before we can submit anything. So that is where it's at. As I say, if I'd engaged with the Ministry earlier, we would have had the EIS part started earlier, but we'd still be finishing it now because we made a change from chlorine dioxide to UV. I'm very glad we made that change because thankfully we're not studying what happens with chlorine dioxide, but that's what we would have been doing last year had we done it then. The project team. So with McElhaney doing all the treatment plant design, it makes sense that they actually write up all of these plans for the operational certificate. That's what we would have had them been doing anyway. It's just that we have to get them done now. So even though I'm saying here the budget for writing commissioning plans and operational plans part of our phase 2 project, that's true, but it's the LWMP and what the Ministry is saying, submit all of this at once, that's driving us to do it here and now. So that's why we think it's good to have McElhaney do that, and then change, we're saying we might as well have McElhaney be our lead consultant for the entire report because they're more intimately involved, and Troy Vassos from Integrated Sustainability. You know, they're not the design engineer anymore, but Troy is still the regulatory specialist here who's dealt with us in the Environmental Appeals Board back in the day, so we propose to keep him on in that capacity. And then the budget I've changed to reflect these things. So here we go on the top of page 94. So the original LWMP budget that we presented back in May was based on what we knew at the time, assuming we had to write up an EIS based on the field work that had been done over previous years, and a relatively straightforward process to produce a report that would look a little bit like the Revelstoke one that I linked to if you had a chance to look at it. So what's changed? The LWMP report itself won't change much, it'll still be similar, but a huge amount of work on the EIS, and then I've just put in here about the operational certificate reports and things, just as a line item there that has to be done, which we would have gotten around to as part of phase 2 sooner or later, but it's triggered here by the LWMP work. So all in all, the LWMP causes us to do quite a bit of work here. The regulatory stuff would have to be done sooner or later anyway. For phase 2 budget, while it sounds great to say we can put this into phase 2, it's where it belongs. We do have some good news coming out of our EIS work in terms of what we will and won't have to do out in the wetland to augment the wetland. The simplest thing the consultants are saying is simply put the water there and let it do its thing. We don't actually need to go out there and dig channels to interconnect the ponds or other things that we'd originally proposed to do. So that's a rare case of less is more on this project. So it's created a little bit of breathing space in terms of a budget. So that's why I'm suggesting here with that our update that we can fit it in. I'd also put in the table there on page, page 95. This table has been shared with the funding agency just about how our scope has changed a little bit from the application and the timing. So while we've said to them the scope is changing, we will still achieve the same outcomes, putting water to the wetlands, recreational trails, these sorts of things, but the amount of work we have to do to achieve them has changed because the project has changed. And the timing might have changed too. So we flagged with the Strategic Priorities Fund that a request for an extension will be coming. And they've said, yeah, write it up and get it in. So we're working on that. But it's a rare case where the scope required, the actual works required to achieve the outcomes is less, not more, which is good. And that leads to, in that revised budget at the bottom of page 95, the line item for the reed bed and the wetland augmentation, which includes getting the water to the wetland, has shrunk because that part is less complex. The other line items I've left unchanged, and I expect though that 2C and 2D will come down simply because we need to do less to achieve our outcomes in those. But that, hopefully good news, will wait for a future phase 2 update. So for now, it's a case of the LWMP costs. We have our LWMP budget. This extra stuff on EIS we're putting into the phase 2 project. The earlier stuff on EIS field work from a couple of years ago was done in the, actually when it wasn't even a 2-phase project. That earlier environmental study is part of the original project. And then from a procurement point of view, requesting authorization here to sole source McIlhenny to do it because they are in the best position to do that. And same for Ecofish. Obviously we've started, we carry on with them. It's if we had the discussions with the Minister of Environment earlier, would have had this discussion about budget earlier. Although it would have been a different story too, because the Ministry initially was going to request a lot of study about chlorine dioxide because no one's ever dealt with it before. So we're thankful we're not dealing with that anymore. So that's our, that is my report there. And I will then pass it back to Council for questions, which I'm sure there are some. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, Council?
Sure. I'm just, I don't know, confused, disappointed. I'm still struggling to understand why we're under, how we got to this stage. Why suddenly we're way behind on these consent, like these consent orders were written 6 years ago?
5 years ago.
5 years ago? And why we're suddenly failing to meet them. We've had 5 years to try and get all of this done. Why were we on the path of the chlorine dioxide in the first place if this other method is so much better and now it's causing us all these problems to change, et cetera, et cetera. I'm just...
I'll just take chlorine dioxide and then ask separately if you've got more, et cetera, et cetera. But it's a really good question, and it's been the defining feature of this project. One of the two defining features is the wet weather situation.
Yeah.
Right, the other one is the summer situation where we have zero dilution and a phosphorus issue. So thankfully we do not have huge flows and a phosphorus issue at the same time of the year, separate things. What led us to chlorine dioxide with very large flows in winter and without tertiary filtration, which we didn't have at the start because we didn't have funding for it, we cannot do ultraviolet disinfection. The only way we can do disinfection is with a chemical agent. Right, the water isn't clean enough for the UV to penetrate it. So we've got partially treated lagoon water, and some of it will go through our post-treatment. Then we have these excess wet weather flows that's more than what our post-treatment can handle, they would get disinfection and go directly to the creek. Chlorine dioxide can disinfect both streams. You could also use conventional chlorine, but it's very toxic to fish. So chlorine, don't want. We looked at other agents, peracetic acid, performic acid, ozone. Of all of them, chlorine dioxide came out on top as the thing that can handle. The partially treated water is not so toxic to fish, but hasn't been used before in Canada for wastewater because you don't do it unless you have no choice, right? So we virtually had no choice. What has happened since then, we got our funding, additional funding for doing tertiary treatment. This is great because it means that water going through our post-lagoon treatment is now clean enough we can use ultraviolet light, chemical-free, to disinfect. There is no issue with chemical residuals. So that solves one problem, but it's a change in the project, it's caused delay and so on. It's an improvement, for sure, but it's just yet another thing that has slowed us down. So the project has kept changing shape over the years as we try to respond to these requirements, and we're trying to meet our old permit and what are the current regulatory requirements that we will be required to meet as part of an operational certificate. And we wanted to try and meet them both without actually having to reload and do a second project literally within 5 years. So had we just stuck with saying, okay, we're simply going to do what we need to do to meet our permit and that consent order, we could have done that, and we actually would have been doing chlorine dioxide disinfection and would be turning around to do add-in tertiary treatment soon. Yeah, and then you got the expense of restarting a whole new project and so on and so on. So yeah, it was in trying to solve all of the problems and have one project that solves everything, and we're going to get there, it has created other problems. It's been the way it's evolved.
So when did how long ago was the decision to, or did we get the funding for the tertiary treatment?
It was spring last year.
Did we finally receive that funding?
Yep.
Okay.
By which time, actually might have even been earlier, by which time we'd actually already started construction and we're trying to get stuff done, and so we don't.
Yeah, because we didn't move we didn't step away from the chlorine until spring of this year.
And it was actually with the new design engineer, they'd suggested we should take another look at UV, and which we did. The other thing that had changed, we now had tertiary treatment capacity for 7,200 cubic meters a day. Originally it was only 36. So what's happened there is the amount of flow we can treat has gone up. At the same time, when we reviewed the wet weather flows, the incidence of the high wet weather flows has come down. It looks like there's only a few days a year that we would need treatment for flow over 7,200. And we're actually going through that in greater detail right now as we speak. So yeah, the shape of the project has changed. I'll say it's for the better, but everything has taken time. So that's why we've missed those deadlines. And even the representative of the ministry had said, yeah, that's been Cumberland's decision to try and do it all at once. If you'd just done the simple things, you would have been finished, and that's true. But would now be operating chlorine dioxide at significant expense. So it's been 6 of one and half a dozen of the other. I think it's probably the best way, but there's to describe it.
So operationally, we'd be spending a lot more money in the long run.
Yeah, UV is the preferred disinfection method for a bunch of very good reasons. You'd normally otherwise do chlorine, which is good old bleach, hypochlorite. It's one of the components that you need to make chlorine dioxide. So you use that plus. That's why it's way more expensive. Aquaculture uses it because it's fish friendly. They kind of have no choice. But yeah, so we ended up having to go for a unique disinfection method, and then we were going to have to prove to the Ministry of Environment that it wouldn't have an effect in the creek with the residuals, whole other thing. So we're happy to avoid that.
So I'm still wondering why we didn't move to the UV as soon as we realized we had the funding for the tertiary treatments.
I wish we had, to be honest.
Why was
at that point the projects team, the direction was, let's get our design finalised and built, because the clock was ticking for all of these reasons. And everybody was
And then
had enough of changes, to be honest. So it was, but yes, that would have changed things then.
New topic. How long do we have to spend all this grant money? I know these usually come with timeframes, and are we running up onto time pressure with our grant monies as well?
So we've got 3 streams of grant funding. ICIP, Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, joint federal provincial one. It was originally expiring March of 2024. We applied for an extension, which we have until March of 2026. So that's been done,
Okay.
and we expect to be commissioning at the end of 2025. So we are good on that one. Green Municipal Fund, that was actually the first funding we ever got. That one is good till September of next year, and I'll be talking, we've had some extensions on that. I'll talk to them again. Yeah, we're going to be close, whether we actually need to formally do that one again. Strategic Priorities Fund, that's paying for the tertiary treatment and the wetland augmentation and the channel infill, all that work, is until September of next year. That's the original timeframe for the grant. So that's where we flagged to them we'll be looking for a 1-year extension. That's for the phase 2 works.
Okay.
So yeah, that's
And we're likely to get all of these extensions, or are
It-
they usually fairly?
it happens all the time.
Okay.
Regret, and to be honest, for these major infrastructure projects, a 3-year time period is really quite, from when you get given the grant to when you're expected to complete it, is quite challenging, unless you happen to have the design sitting on the shelf already.
And are we likely to get an extension on our consent order, because it looks like we're going to go past the ministry approval date?
All right, so that's where it gets interesting. So we've told them, the first line of the consent order says Cumberland commits to doing these things by the end of 2024. The consent order then goes on to the orders, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the order, number 3, said have a approved liquid waste management plan in place by the end of 2025. So the key word there is approved by the minister. We submit, the ministry staff review, eventually they say to the minister, please approve this. That's normally a 1-year process. So that's what led to, we submit at the end of 2024, it should be ready by the end of 2025. And we'd originally said we can't be responsible for how long the ministry takes to do its process. You can't penalise us if the ministry sits on it for 2 years. Right. So the consent order came out the way it is. They've got a year, and if it's taking longer for reasons beyond our control, we can ask for an extension. Right. Key word is reasons beyond our control. So at the moment, the Ministry of Environment would say, well, you know, we've caused the delay. Some of these causes are within our control, some certainly have not been. So that's an open question. It's also possible the ministry might get it done in 9 months, but yeah, that's not within our control either. So we're going to go back to Troy and also actually the lawyers here on that. We can ask for an extension, and what we've been told is if the ministry says no, we can even appeal that decision to the Environmental Appeals Board. Whether we'd want to is a different question. And my feeling at the moment is we get our LWMP completed and submitted, get the ministry's feedback from their staff, whether we actually then need to formally ask for an extension. That's just sort of my view at the moment. However, Troy and the lawyers might say we should make that application right away. That's yet to be determined. So that's the thing. If they say no, we can appeal it, but if they really wanted to throw the book at us, yes, we might be looking at the $40,000 fine.
Yeah, and further to that, we'd hope they wouldn't, because, I mean, we're midstream with the project and with the submitted LWMP by the end of the first quarter in 2025. I think we've demonstrated, like, we're moving towards the end goal of having things wrapped up by the end of 2025, so.
So who's next? Go ahead.
Just a simple one. Is this the last day for budget amendments for this project?
Sure hope so.
Okay. Thank you.
I have no questions.
LWMP by end of March 2025. That's now 5 months away, one of which is pretty much Christmas. No project I know ever sees Christmas coming, and everyone says we're delayed because we didn't realize it was going to be Christmas. So, how confident?
If nothing else changes, so what we have to do now to finish our LWMP is, you could say it's a lot of desktop work. We've still got our committee here, so we can finally close it, bring it back to our committee with the final shape of the report, and we'll do one more public session at the end of that too. Here's the final shape of it. So if nothing else changes, yes, it's now sort of within the hands of myself and the consulting team to get it done. Thankfully, the LWMP part, not a construction project, and the field work that we had to do has already been done. So the Ecofish got that done. The ministry might review it all and say, there needs to be, you've done A, B, C, and you now need to do X, Y, and Z. And that sometimes happens where they've either requested amendments or additions to an LWMP. They did that with Revelstoke. And then it sort of restarts the process. So that would be, for example, then, that extension for reasons not within our control, because the ministry wanted more and they're asking for more, that would extend it. Or they then say, these extra things, here's your LWMP and your operational certificate, but also now you have to come up with a plan to do X, Y, and Z within a certain time frame. So it depends on the specifics, how that goes. But to the original question, to get it done from here, I think it's now back to where the circumstances are within the control of the team. And for McElhaney, for example, all these technical details on the operational certificate, once they have finished the design, then we can turn our heads to commissioning plans and operating plans and things like that and get them done. But the operating plan, the technical part of it called the control narrative for actually how you would operate the treatment plant is just about to undergo its third revision in 3 years because the project has kept changing shape. So we can't define exactly how to operate it till we've defined exactly what it is.
But those are things for the OC.
Yes,
right,
which has to be submitted also at the end of March at the same time.
I see, right.
Yeah.
And so if I were to...
Well, that's what I'm proposing. It was all meant to be done by the end of this year, and I'm saying we'll submit, what we want is to submit a draft LWMP report to the Ministry for review. All those operational certificate things like commissioning plan, operations plan, etc., we don't need to submit drafts of those for review. We just get them all done and put them as a package. So there's, So within that is a feedback loop from the ministry. We submit them a draft LWMP report. They have a look at it and give us their, I was going to say unofficial, that's not the right word. They give us feedback on the draft. But if there's major things, then it would trigger some kind of an LWMP amendment. And there's potential for a major thing where they might require, for example, the addition of treatment to remove nitrogen. That's never been a part of any discussion on this project with the ministry in the last decade. And if that was to happen, that would be part of, here's your LWMP, but you need a plan over the next however many years to then address nitrogen, which is another treatment step. So those sorts of things can happen. So we have to play the cards in front of us, get it done and in, and if there's minor things, it might be an amendment to the process. If there's major things, it gets written into the time frame of the LWMP. The goal was always it's a plan and a regulatory authorization, and it can set a time frame for the municipality to meet requirements that it doesn't currently meet. And these requirements, over time, just get more and more. The requirements that were set in 1998, which we're going to meet now, but they're obsolete in terms of current regulatory things. So keeping up with the times is challenging. That's the idea of the LWMP, but it is always part of it. It gives us time to make major improvements if we still have to do any after this project, which I sure hope we don't.
If I may. I think quite a few of the things you referenced there were, we submit and the ministry may say, hey, we need to, but I believe those mean that we are entitled to ask for an extension if they do that. Yes, unless we
If they asked for,
really submit something awful. But
if they asked for an amendment,
yeah,
an extra, then yes. Right. We give it to them and they review it, and they've basically said we'll turn it around in a month and give you our comments. But if they're asking for a change, we had a terms of reference for an EIS, and as a result of the EIS, if they say, okay, you did A, B, C, but really got to do X now, and rewrite your LWMP and EIS to include X, that's grounds for an extension.
So I just want to come quickly back to then. Apart from things that would be grounds for an extension, 5 months to get that submission, and even if they are okay with us being a quarter late, like 3 months late, if you're writing a risk register, what are the top two things about? I would worry about this. Like, is there a key person at McElhenney who, if they aren't available, is there? What is there? What are the one or two key things that would threaten that deliverable?
Certainly, if the key staff at McElhenney were unavailable, the two guys that are our lead for the design on this are the ones who will be writing these plans, and so they've said, yep, we can do this, and they've done it for Revelstoke. So I'd like to think McElhenney has got the backup strength on their bench that if one of them is unavailable, they can carry on. It's the same with Ecofish for processing the EIS. Another risk, I guess, is actually with First Nations consultation, if they ask for more, right, we can't control that. And they had asked to be involved in the development of the operating plan and what's called the receiving environment monitoring plan, and we will do that. But they could always ask for more. We can't control that. So that's still, till it's completed, that's a risk. And with our committee, so we'll be bringing back to committee consideration of things like source control bylaw and stormwater master plan. And the committee might say, well, we want to do a whole lot more on stuff. But in that case, I think our position is likely to be, if we want more stuff done on stormwater or source control, which means trade waste policy, for example, that becomes actually part of the work of the future plan monitoring committee. Right, and we have to create one of those. So certain things can be put on the other side of the post, and what we wanted to get done is define exactly what has to be on this side of the goalpost, and things that can come later will. So that's how we manage the risks. But to your point, they're not eliminated entirely, but I see the consultant's one, EIS is another, First Nation is another, I think, for public, and with committee our village aspirational objectives. I think we could probably all agree the aspirational objective right now is to get it done. Future ones, if they can wait for the future, we'll put them to the future.
Thank you.
Long-winded answer to the question?
Yes,
but
thank you.
Yep.
My question is around the funding. So this $300,000 is coming from our AAP money? Is that correct, or where is it coming from?
So the way we have it with Phase 2, we had a $2.5 million grant from Strategic Priorities Fund, and then the remainder came from Village of Cumberland. Right.
Is it coming from that fund? Sorry, I'm going to move us along.
Yeah.
So the funding is coming from Phase 2, all of it. The $300,000 is coming from Phase 2. So what's the impact on Phase 2? Is it just less? So we're not going to naturalize the channel, or what is the impact? Because Phase 2 was the piece that we were very attached to.
So in the simplest terms, we are still going to we have to do a new channel. It'll be a new naturalized channel. We have to fill in the old one once we've done that. But it's the wetland augmentation part. The way things have changed, we don't have to do as much work to get the water to the wetland and within it. Right, so that part has simplified, which is great. So there's a cost saving there, but we have had to do a hell of a lot more study on the wetland itself. One of the outcomes of that study is we don't actually have to go in and dig stuff within the wetland. So that's it was good that we don't have to do that, but we had to study a lot more to find that out.
Yeah,
so it's sort of a quid pro quo.
Okay, so my other question is, given that the project, and this is not tenable either, none of this really is ideal, as you know. Given that the project has changed significantly and that we have 3 different funders who were attached to an original plan, is there an opportunity to go back to those funders and say, we are doing something different, it's taking more time and money, or to apply secondarily? And have we looked at that and exhausted all of those options?
Effectively, yes, there's 3 things there. We have gone back to them and said that there are scope changes happening because, it's not here, it's there. It's not chlorine dioxide, it's now UV, stuff like that. So we've kept them appraised of how the shape has changed. Their main thing is really more concerned about the outcomes as opposed to the physical work you're doing. What is this project going to achieve? So that being said, we keep them apprised of the scope changes. They know the costs have gone up, and we've told them that. And we've also said, is there any more money available? And the answer is no. That's why we went out for phase 2 funding from Strategic Priorities Fund and split it into 2 phases to do that. And at this stage, there are no actual other funding opportunities we could apply for, and for a project that's in execution where we are, it's pretty much out of the question. But I'd asked that question of the feds 2.5 years ago, and they said, your best bet would be to separate it into 2 and apply for funding for the second part, which we did. So yeah, we've exhausted almost all the... We've exhausted all the options that we know that exist.
We've exhausted all of the options, our resident options as well. Let's be clear about that. So I also see there's a contingency for liaison with the ministry of $48.3 thousand. I assume that's the $40,000 fine we potentially will have? Or no?
I hope not. The reason why I've done that there is we had a budget approved earlier. I've just left it at the same budget, and I don't intend to use that if I don't have to. If the ministry come back and says, you've done A, B, C, we want X and Y, that sort of thing, we just don't know. So I guess I'm reluctant to say I'll reduce the LWMP budget until we've actually finished it. But yes, that's a possibility, I suppose. If it plays out the way I would like, and there isn't much scope change back and forth, and we end up where we haven't used that 40 grand, then yes, that would be one possibility. We'll try to not let it come to that.
Okay. Any other questions?
So just to be clear, we're basically paying for this part of this with savings.
The extra EIS work and the technical work for the operational certificate is coming out of savings that we're going to realise on those works for the reed bed and wetland augmentation. So that's at least there's one good news story.
One. Yeah,
better than none.
The extra budget is in the next report. Ready?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll move the... You can do it.
Yeah, I got it. I'll move the council provide authorization to sole source McElhaney Consulting Services for up to $60,000 for the Stage 3 LWMP. The council provide authorization to sole source McElhaney Consulting Services for up to $50,000 for the operational certificate. And council provide authorization to increase the contract value of Ecofish Research Limited from $90,000 to $250,000 for the enhanced EIS for the Stage 3 Liquid Waste Management Plan. And that council approve the inclusion of the $300,000 for the enhanced EIS and operational certificate documentation as part of the Phase 2 wastewater upgrades project. And that council provide authorization to village staff to allocate the Stage 3 LWMP budget to and execute contracts with the various stakeholders as appropriate.
Did you do the first 2 as well?
Right.
The receiving and approving the additional?
You're reading something slightly
Yeah.
different.
Slightly I don't different. See this.
Reading it from the recommendations down in the actual report. And the council received and that council received the Liquid Waste Management Plan update presentation from Paul Nash, Liquid Waste Management Plan Coordinator, and that council approved the additional expenditure for up to an additional $300,000 to complete both the Stage 3 Liquid Waste Management Plan and other ministry requirements to be reallocated from the Phase 2 wastewater budget and funding.
Second.
Seconded.
Yeah, I don't,
Excuse me, I believe the Ecofish numbers were different.
yeah, they were.
Oh, they were.
There's a precise dollar value there.
Not materially different in the
Oh.
final outcome, but
So I think as long as he's meaning to read the recommendations that are in the cover
On the agenda.
agenda,
Yeah.
not the report.
we can
Okay.
all see that and vote on that.
Yep. So should I amend that the council authorized to the increase in contract value to Ecofish Research Limited from $101,160.42 to $249,342.90?
Second.
There we go.
There we go. Sorry.
Seconded by Councillor Sullivan. All in favor? Okay, that's carried. And now, update from Collier's project lead. Come on up.
Bad news train.
Want me to introduce you?
Please, start us off here.
So, kind of like Groundhog Day, the movie.
A little bit.
Bad enough to show up in person.
We're back again, with more project increase. So the Village of Cumberland's High Performance Wastewater Lagoon Project faces cost increases, now estimated at 17,617 and change. The key factors for the cost increases include schedule delays, unforeseen scope changes, and necessary contingency adjustments. I wish it was better news, but we've got Hans Seidemann here from Collier project leaders to provide a bit of an update on the project. And then there's a number of sources, funding sources in the staff report as well to consider. And then there's a couple recommendations. So, but we'll let Hans kind of provide a bit of an update on the project and the costs, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. Thanks, Rob. So, as council will hopefully recall, we last updated the project budget last year, I believe around September of last year. Shortly following that budget approval, we encountered difficulty as we were entering construction with our initial site contractor, and ended in some conflicts with our designer at the time. To resolve that, we earlier this year came to the difficult conclusion to terminate, or to mutually part ways, I should say, with our design engineer and complete design with a new design engineer. And at that time, we knew there would be budget impacts. We couldn't quantify what they would be, but we understood that something was going to occur, and we had hoped that in completing the design that we'd find further savings that might offset some of the costs that we anticipated encountering. That did end up occurring, though not sufficiently to offset all of the additional costs that was incurred in the interim. So where we had hoped to be back into construction in March of this year, where now design is complete to the point where we are ready to recommence construction with civil construction. We have issued drawings that our construction manager is generally satisfied with, and which we have had priced by our civil site contractor. And so we have pricing available to us. The budget that we bring to you today, the largest ticket items have been actually priced by the market and are not simply estimates, which is what they've been largely in the past. We are prepared to get it back into construction, and so we are updating council with this forecasted variance for the project, so that we can update the project budget to proceed confidently through to the project's completion. And as I outlined in my report, the majority or the plurality of the costs that we've encountered were simply due to the delay. Costs for the designer, costs for the construction manager to support that design effort as it extended longer than anticipated. We have had a increase as well in cost resulting from scope. However, as my report outlines, the voluntary scope changes that we did undertake with council's approval earlier this year in May, we requested council authorization to to pursue scope changes related to UV. Those scope changes have been of net benefit to the project, and so those scope changes writ large have caused cost increases. As you can see from my report, the anticipated pure construction costs or direct construction costs have actually decreased in this interim period. And the final source of project variance is a restoration of construction contingency to the budget that we anticipate is well, not anticipate to be needed, but is important to have available to use to avoid running into further delays and incurring further delay costs. So to allow the project team and the steering committee to be able to respond quickly to unforeseen challenges as they arrive and have some funds set aside to address those, so that we're not having to come back to council and ask for further budget updates in the future, which is the intent. I think that generally covers it. Happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you. Questions, council?
Okay, well, I guess the big one is we've got a design now, and construction is beginning like this month, next month.
We have designs in place that are effectively ready to be issued for construction. They've been in a state of readiness now, and certainly priced by the contractor for well over a month. I think the only reason that we've not already gotten underway with construction is, the construction manager, understandably given the history of the project, wants some certainty that that they are, that they have the authorization to go ahead and aren't going to be, having to stop again, which was a source of, some pretty significant concern and cost last time around. So that's, I think, the only reason that we haven't already begun. We're effectively ready to break ground again as soon as we give the word go.
Okay, and then so we should be by just about this time next year done?
We will be largely through construction. There's, I would say, the current schedule calls for full completion, but that's also commissioning of equipment and things like that, stretching into the very earliest parts of 2026. But the bulk of construction activities, the installation of equipment, I think we would be largely complete with construction activities by the end of next year. Yeah. And certainly for to your earlier question on the last agenda item as to grant funding, we will have expended all of the funds certainly that was provided by granting agencies by that point. So it's difficult, not to say impossible, but difficult for them to then claw that back. So
Okay.
we will have spent all the money that is required to have been spent by that point for sure.
Anybody else?
All right. I'd like to move the.
Oh, I'm not ready. Sorry,
sorry.
I have questions.
Questions.
Yes, not going to be quite that easy. So now I forgot my question. Oh, so the last time we were down there, we talked about a secondary. I'm not sure that's the correct word. Retention pond for stormwater, so that we're not having to do the massive overflows, and that we can retain some of that water potentially to even out flows in low flows or something. Does this budget include that work?
I'm not sure.
No. A detention pond, we would have it.
But there's a reduction in the excess wet weather basin.
Right.
There's a shift in cost.
The concept of a detention pond, if we need it, would be part of phase 2 because it would be an LWMP requirement. So
Is it built into that budget?
no, because we are not
So
sure
we know
if
we
need
need
it.
that thing. We know we need that thing.
I'll draw a distinction. There's a disinfection system and then there was a detention pond. The original idea was disinfect this water and then we'd just use the dirt that's there to create a pond just for the sake of detention. Not that we really need it. So that's just a good idea of doing something there. That part is yet to be defined, and we're working on whether we actually really need to do any of that at all. So
Right. So we were at a wastewater treatment tour this morning, and they have a retention pond for stormwater, and then they use that pond to augment their low flow so that their flow is not so rich in the low flow times. And I thought to myself, isn't that smart that we've already built that in to our plan? And when we were out there, we did talk about that. We know that we're having atmospheric rivers on sort of a regular basis now. So do we need that pond? And if we do, how much money do we need for that pond? Because I don't expect that you'll want to come back to us and ask us for more money.
We don't need the detention pond. We certainly don't need to put flow into a low flow period. That's some treatment plants have a unusual situation where you're so water efficient and so on that you end up with relatively high strength water coming in. So Cumberland doesn't have that problem. So we don't need to store water and add it in summer. The concept for that detention pond was just post disinfection to have it run through a grassed area and a little bit of time to get rid of the chlorine dioxide or chlorine before it hit the creek. Not a regulatory requirement. Okay, to have that. It was just sort of a nice thing to do to give it some little wetland style treatment before it goes to the creek when those peak wet weather flows occur. That's the part that we're looking at under the magnifying glass right now about the peak wet weather flows, because thanks to the efforts of Rob and his department, they've actually come down.
Right.
And so we may not need it at all. We're looking into that part.
Okay.
Not sure if I've totally answered the question.
Just a quick one, Paul. If you do have to add it, though, like if you do decide in the end, do you have a cost for it?
Oh, we don't. And if we had to add it, that would be fair game as something that gets funded under the LWMP borrowing authority. Because things where they say you have to have this, X, we've done ABC, you have to have X plus Y. That's the reason why they give the borrowing authority. We don't want to do yet more borrowing, is that you can do those things in the future. So anything where they come back and say you have to have this that we don't already have goes into that category.
Okay. Any other questions?
Just one relating to finance and the budget. The 2.5 million that we just got the alternative approvals process money for, I'm assuming the 1.5 million that it says that we've already spent, that's sort of repaying all of the places that we the last budget increase, we were like taking it from, so we've put all that money back in those reserves basically, or haven't taken it from those reserves.
That's correct.
That's correct. But then this $577,000 is coming from a completely different reserve than we were using at that time, and I'm just wondering what the rationale is, why we're one over the other, or why this is a better one to take the funds from.
Yeah, so when Annie put that 1.52 million together, she was scraping
Yes.
reserves. She was just scraping them out. That's why we said we think you should go out and borrow 2.5 and pay and don't borrow from those internal reserves. So part of that was the wastewater, like the sewer and water infrastructure reserve of 406 or something thousand. And so you still have that option. You could use that instead of the linear asset, and I'll explain my thinking for the linear assets in a minute. But you could still do that, but that would leave you like with $170,000 for sewer, and that's for future, which is below the minimum.
Yeah.
And so it was really never meant to fund anything extra. Definitely, those were not meant to fund. That's why we said borrowing. But now, of course, there is extra. So when the team came forward with the other costs, I knew I didn't want to use those reserves because we were going below minimums, and I just didn't think that was very prudent. And so I said, I just was thinking, well, there's got to be some linear assets in that project, and asked the team to sort of identify those linear, and that's why we've recommended the linear, because we don't have enough funds in there to do all the work that we need to do for our linear assets. But at this point in time, we have more funds there than we do in the other reserves to use. So that was my thinking. But you definitely have the option. You could also use the sewer stabilization funds. but then you're just probably going to be robbing Peter to pay Paul, or whatever that saying is,
Later.
because, you're using that to stabilize your operating costs that are coming up as well.
And then my other question is, as we went through budget process, is this, and we were looking at the linear asset reserve numbers, is this $577,000, is that reflected in the numbers we were looking at, or is that coming off of?
That'll come off.
That's coming off of those
Yes,
numbers?
that'll
Okay.
reduce those amounts.
Okay.
And it'll reduce it in water, sewer, and storm. Those are the pipes.
So not our roads.
Not roads.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other funding source out of that 1.52 was the Community Works funds, and that we can use for the roads, and I don't recommend using that. But again, you have some options if you prefer.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, if I could just make one more quick comment here. So the second recommendation there actually isn't applicable, or we need to revise that resolution and put it below the council resolution for the expenditures of the 1.557 million.
The authorized construction?
Correct. Yeah. Don't know that we need. Well, I don't know that we need council authorized construction activities to be resumed without exceeding the current council approved budget. I think that was the thinking before we found the funding.
Right, okay.
So
now that we're giving you the funding, we don't need that,
No, but I think correct.
assuming we are getting
Correct,
it.
but what I think we need is a resolution below the funding resolution of the 1.557 million that states something like council authorized staff or the CAO and CFO to enter into contracts with the contractors and equipment suppliers.
Right. We will have to amend the Maple Rinders contract to allow that extra budget because they will be paying their subcontractors. Yeah.
Okay.
So authorize CFO and CAO to enter into new contracts as needed.
Amendments.
Amendments.
To Maple Rinders, yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll make a motion that council receive the presentation of the wastewater project update, presentation from Hans Seidemann, Senior Project Manager with Collier's project leaders, and that council authorize the CAO and CFO to amend contracts with and execute contracts with our contractors, and that council approve the additional expenditure of 1.557,400 to increase the budget for the wastewater upgrade project phase 1 from $16,060,000 to $17,617,400, with $980,000 to be funded from borrowing approved earlier this year and $577,400 to be funded through the linear asset renewal reserve, and that council direct staff to bring forward an amendment to the adopted 2024 to 2028 financial plan review bylaw to reflect this expenditure.
And did we get the contracts?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, all in favor? There you go. Hans, we hope to see you at the grand opening.
Yeah, ribbon cutting.
We'll pay for the party with all the saved funds we achieved.
That's right. That's right. Now you're thinking. Okay, rural Redip. I just got tired there and didn't want to read the whole thing. Just
Yell at one.
That's the
deflated.
sound of frogs in the lagoons.
Good evening again, Mayor and Council. You might be interested to know there actually was a frog in the council chambers earlier today.
Nice.
And it was a small green tree frog, and we safely took it outside.
You rescued him and put him outside.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And that's just how old these buildings are.
That's
The
right.
Wildlife has moved in.
That's unrelated to this report.
It is.
So
Fun
the
facts.
purpose of this report is to seek council approval for an application to the Rural Economic Diversification Infrastructure Program for an economic feasibility study of the approximately 12-hectare village-owned Union Road lands. And this work would build on the baseline studies that were completed with the 2022 REDIP funds. That's the bioinventory, civil servicing, geotechnical, and appraisal. And the project would advance economic development goals and the overall municipal facilities planning project. So, the funder does not require a resolution from council to make the application. However, as per the delegation of authority bylaw, council must approve all grant applications greater than $50,000. The amount of the grant application would be for $100,000, which is the maximum grant amount for this program. So just a little bit about why we are proposing this. We were unsuccessful, the village was unsuccessful in the 2023 intake, although the year before that we were successful, and that's what funded the baseline studies and what also funded the fiscal impact assessment for the employment lands, which is coming to council soon. We're just finalizing that with the consultants. So the next steps in the development of this land on Union Road have been revised from the scope that we proposed for the 2023 REDIP application in response to feedback from the funder and advice from a consultant hired to prepare the grant application. We're working again with the team who prepared our property facilities review, which was presented to council in early 2022. So before making detailed plans for servicing, subdivision, and disposition, which could be sale or lease, the village needs to understand the economic feasibility of different lands. We plan to allocate approximately 3 hectares for a future public works facility, leaving more than 9 hectares that could be leveraged to benefit the community economically. And this is described in like a 1-page fact sheet that is on our website. So this information is available to the public as well about the overall aims for this land. So this economic feasibility study would assess the feasibility of what uses exactly should be on the site to support the local economy, create jobs, and attract investment. We've done some good work in the official community plan review and talking to the community about the possible uses for these lands and explaining sort of the general economic benefit. And we really have realized that the piece that's missing is this economic feasibility piece. A little bit stuck on like exactly what. We've got the broad strokes, but exactly what and how do we know it's going to work? So the feasibility study, the scope of the study would be informed by previous economic studies, including the Village of Cumberland Investment Attraction Plan in 2020, Economic Development Strategy of 2018 to 2023 period. The study would evaluate the demand for service, commercial, and other identified community needs in the previously completed economic plans, such as overnight accommodation in the area and others, and then determine the viability of the Union Road site to meet these needs. And a key objective is to determine the amount of land required and the best location on the 12-hectare site to meet these demands, while also identifying the most viable commercial uses and professional services for the project. The recommendation is that council approve the application to the REDIP program for a grant of $100,000 for an economic feasibility study of the village-owned Union Road lands.
Thank you. Council, questions? Mover?
I was just doing the math on 3 hectares. Up from 6.
That might be premature.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was just curious.
Yeah.
No questions for me.
Nope, no, I'm happy to see this moving forward.
Get the money.
I'll move the council approve the application to the Rural Economic Diversification and Infrastructure Program for a grant of $100,000 for an economic feasibility study of the village-owned Union lands.
Second.
And all in favor of that? Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Courtney.
Okay, and appointment of officers, that's pretty straightforward. Our former CFO is going to be our
Let's do it.
deputy. Yes, please.
I'll move it. No, I'll move that council appoint Michelle Mason, Chief Administrative Officer, as Deputy Financial Officer.
Second.
All in favor? That's carried unanimously as well. And municipal auditor appointment for 2024 year end. Hello, Andre.
It's my first one and also another straightforward one, I believe.
Very. It's a good first one.
So the purpose of this report is to recommend council to appoint MNP LLP as the municipal auditor for the 2024 year end. And the fee for this audit and administration costs proposed by MNP LLP for 2024 is 25,200. So in 2019, Council has appointed MNP LLP as the auditor for the 1921 year ends following a competitive bid process that was renewed for 22 and 23 year ends based on the possibility of a 2-year extension included in the contract. And staff recommends renewing MNP LLP audit services for another year to facilitate the audit process for 2024 year end. And then in 2025, we will be proceeding with a competitive bid process to select an auditor for the 2025 year end and following few years. So the MNP LLP proposed schedule includes the interim audit to take place mid-November, so that's coming up very soon. And 2024 year end audit fieldwork is scheduled for March 2025. So staff recommends that Council appoints the audit firm of MNP LLP for the 2024 financial fiscal year.
Thank you. Who wants to move it?
Seems straightforward, yeah.
Yep.
I'll move that council appoints the audit firm of MNP LLP for the 2024 financial year.
Second.
All in favor? None opposed? That's
Thank you,
carried
sir.
unanimously. Congratulations on your first successful
Wow.
motion.
We're to put you in the hot seat there.
See you next time.
We'll have more questions next time.
And now we are on to strategic priorities, third quarter report.
Okay, so this is for the third quarter for council, and staff is here if you have any questions as well for some of the strategic priority update. There is the also the financial services quarterly report for the third quarter. There is some stats provided to you for protective services, which is fire and policing, which you heard from Scott Mercer earlier on, and then also some development services stats as well. And finally, your council resolution list and how we're doing against that as well. And so I've highlighted a few things for the quarter, one of which is pretty exciting. It's the Souther property was decommissioned, and well, I guess that's not super exciting, but at least it's completed, and it will now naturally restore itself. So that was a very challenging concept to come up with, and staff did a really great job to make that happen. And
it looks awesome.
It looks really good.
Yeah.
It took quite a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Good stuff.
it was really
very
hard to
challenging.
figure out how to get there, and then they did, and
Yeah.
they got it done. So it was really great. And then we've purchased 2 vehicles. We have one in service, the truck, and unfortunately the facility van was stuck in a huge hailstorm in the States en route. So it is now.
Like it's all damaged from it?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Oh, no.
Of course.
So.
Did we own it at the time, or was it not owned until delivery?
Gotta be some insurance.
Yeah, I think they're working through it that way through that. It's fine. Like, yeah, we'll be fine.
No
but
cost to us.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they'll
We would hope,
figure
geez.
that out.
Yikes.
What's your fan?
Yeah.
Harder to get electric vans than you think.
Damn weather.
We do have some emerging projects update from, I had provided you some in the second quarter report, and now I'm just providing you a bit of an update on those, and we're probably going to develop some sort of quarterly report again for those emerging items. We're just not sure what it's going to look like, so we're putting it in this report. And we have some grants, not too many approved compared to last term or last quarter, but we did get a grant approved. And we sponsored a couple of grants for other organizations. And we're hoping to have some that we've applied for get approved. And yeah, so then we can answer any questions you have.
Just what's the skid donation for the fire department?
Yeah, so that was, I'm not quite sure who donated it. It was a grant of some sort that Stefan came across that was an opportunity, and it's a piece of equipment that fits in the back of a vehicle or something like that, and we already have.
I can speak a little to that
Oh,
because
thank
it was
you.
there on the fire hall tour.
Right.
I believe it came up as sort of spare somewhere and was donated, but the actual piece of equipment is a large water tank with a gasoline fueled pump and sort of flow control stuff attached, and you basically can skid a bunch of equipment somewhere quickly, fill it up with water, and then have that supply.
Cool. Well, that's
And
awesome.
then it was sort of one of those right place, right time donations by the sound of it.
And we do have one already, but
Yeah.
we have that one as well. So there's, it was kind of a no-brainer because you can replace it one day if you want to, or you don't have to. Like, it was just an opportunity.
Way to go, Stefan.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. I've got a couple questions.
Go for it.
Just one for Rob. Where are we at with the recosting of the number 2 dam? Or is that coming soon? And then I'll have one for Courtney as well.
So I've been exchanging emails over the last couple of months with the design engineer on the concept plan. I don't have any answers, and it's one of those things that's kind of on the side of my desk right now with all the other projects that are going on. So the hope is when we get the new manager of municipal projects in place, it'll be the first thing he starts to work on.
Okay.
So yeah,
And that's
and
in-
he can get some of that information, provide council with an update, and
He's starting in
get
December.
the project moving.
Early December,
He
right?
is supposed to start the 9th of December.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Yep.
I have one. There's a watershed security. This is you, Kevin, I think. Watershed security strategy. No, watershed security fund application opening. Coming up. I can't remember when. I think it's imminent. Are we going to apply, or are we waiting to see if we get the other one first, or?
I'm going to meet with the Community Forest Society and Tim, our consultant on the project, in the next couple of weeks to answer that question. I've gone through and I've reviewed what all the other approved projects were from the last round, and I think there's probably worth an application, but it's not entirely clear what our project would be given some of the technical studies we think we're likely to have funded, or whether the strategy would be to apply for them just to be sure, or whether they'd be doing something entirely different, which would likely require partnership or a more formal partnership with KFN
Comex, yeah.
around lands, governance, complicated questions. In the meantime, I also have a call with Mosaic's vice president of forestry and sustainability on Friday, I hope, too, just to get a sense. We haven't actually engaged with Mosaic in over a year.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's a great question. It's actively on my list right now to be working on what the best approach would be. I think the intake is November 12th to December 12th. So
Okay.
we have,
We have a bit of time.
yeah, not a lot, though.
Not a lot.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else got questions?
Yeah, I had one more.
Yep, go for
For
it.
Courtney. 3284 Second Street. The guest house is going through a rezoning process right now. But I didn't realize this, but I see here that you're looking to make it VCMU 1? Is that
That is the application we received.
okay? And is that likely where it's headed? My concern is if we just make that VCMU 1, they could then turn around and put a 4-story building on that corner. And I'm not sure The village wants a 4-story building on that corner. Yeah. So that's my concern.
Thank you. We have a meeting with them this week.
Okay.
The applicants to discuss the details, and that's useful input.
Okay.
So, but for the OCP, the extension of that was it an extension of that designation? Or was the suggestion just to, like, explore moving commercial into that area?
So in the draft OCP maps that we
Yeah.
have now, it does not change this lot to VCMU1.
Okay, it's just outside, because we only go a block?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so they would have to rezone anyway. Okay.
But just follow up. They're welcome to apply for whatever rezoning they want.
Yeah.
We can't force that process on the back end here.
That's correct, they are, and we can look at staff will look at the most appropriate next step. So with an OCP amendment application, we have the option to bring it to council for early indication of council support before going through the background study is required. And that might be something that we're looking at with this one, if they wish to stay with this proposal to change the zoning to VCMU1.
Yeah, that might be a good idea.
Yeah. No, because like I support rezoning that for the use that it's been but I'm just not sure that we want to give it something that they would probably keep it as that for the time being, but any future owner or them in the future could then, yeah. So I'm just not sure we want to open ourselves up to that. Yeah, okay. Looking forward to see where.
So while you're there,
Okay.
the Cumberland Hotel site, 2714?
4.
Yep. Are they sleeping, or is it happening?
My understanding is that they are wide awake and working on the details.
Okay.
And now it's a hotel.
We look forward to seeing
Yes.
that at some point.
So is that a reapplication then? They're has the permit or the development that was approved, has that lapsed?
It has not lapsed, so the
With
application.
the underground and everything, right? Is that,
Right.
Yeah.
That's still active within that 2-year permit timeframe. But they're applying for amendments to minor landscaping changes and variance.
Okay.
Minor, though.
Minor, but that's right. So what we've seen now, from what they've applied for so far, is that it would meet the requirements for the criteria for delegated approval, because being very minor in nature.
Okay.
It's been a long time since the community's seen that, but I guess the sign is up there.
Did this sign change? Did the design change on that sign? Because it feels like that cascading isn't there, but I might have just not been looking at it properly.
I don't think it's changed. I think it's a bit hard to see in that particular angle.
But it's
Hard
still
to make
cascades
out.
back.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I thought it changed, and then it looked like it was all just brought forward, so that's what I thought the change was.
Right. No, it does still step back,
Yeah.
but that image isn't the best to show it.
Okay. Sweet. Okay. And that is going to be a hotel instead.
That's right.
Yeah,
That is
Yeah.
the plan.
which is exciting.
Yeah.
We'll
That
have
is.
2 hotels,
From 0 to 2.
from 0 to 2. Like at lightning speed, we're moving here. It's crazy. So good.
We're gonna get mad that we're supporting tourism.
Any other
Getting
questions?
people.
No, I'm okay.
Okay.
The council received the strategic priorities third quarter report, September 2024.
Thank you. Seconder, thank you. All in favor? I see 5 hands. That's carried. Okay, and your council reports are there if anyone has questions. Nice job, Councillor Barecki. In paper, in the agenda package.
Amazing, eh?
Brilliant,
Phenomenal.
brilliant.
And
Right.
I've got more.
Can we have then a motion to receive those reports if there are no questions?
I move the council receive. Oh,
Go on.
I move the council receive the member monthly reports for September to mid-October 2024.
Second.
All in favor? And that's 5 hands as well. Okay, and now I'm going to do notices, motions, and announcement. Please do check the website before you come down here, just in case something's changed. The next village meeting is council meeting is a committee of the whole on November 4th. I'm guessing 5:30. It doesn't say.
I think it's 4:30
Somewhere around
in
there.
the
It'll be on the
calendar.
website. Check the website. You'll find all kinds
4:30.
of other information there.
I think there's a closed portion at 4:30 and public
Okay.
is at 5:30.
Okay. Regular time. Any questions? Nobody's here. Any online questions? Nobody's watching either. Okay, good.
It says 4.
Donna Frawley is
There's 4
watching.
people watching.
Hey, Donna.
Hi, everybody who's watching. Thanks for watching. Okay, so can I have a motion to move into closed, please?
So moved.
Second.
You're not going to read the reasons?
Oh, well, I set it up so well.
Sorry.
I'll move the council close the meeting to the public pursuant to Section 90 of the Community Charter to consider personal information about an identifiable individual who holds or is being considered for a position as an officer, employee, or agent of the municipality, or another position appointed by the municipality, labor relations or other employee relations, discussions with municipal officers and employees respecting municipal objectives, measures and progress reports for the purposes of preparing an annual report under Section 98.
Second.
Thank you very much. It's important